the self that isn't. You close your eyes for a moment and the world seems to vanish. Yet, somehow the sense of being an observer persists, a silent awareness humming in the background, waiting to catch the next flicker of reality. You've always assumed you are merely watching life, a spectator to events unfolding outside your skin. But what if the act of watching is not passive at all? What if, instead, every glance, every attention, every fragment of noticing is creating reality itself, sculpting the world from a formless cloud into something real, something tangible? This is the paradox at the heart of existence, the observer who makes the observed. Think of a simple example, the double-slit experiment in quantum physics. A particle of light, a photon, is fired at a barrier with two slits. If no one is watching, it passes through both slits as a wave, interfering with itself, smearing probability across the screen behind it. But if you set up a detector, if you try to observe which slit the photon actually travels through, everything changes. The photon picks a slit, behaves like a particle, and the beautiful interference pattern vanishes. The very act of observing collapses possibility into reality, wave into point, ambiguity into fact. This isn't just a trick of subatomic light. It's a principle echoing in every corner of existence. When you look at the world, you don't just receive information. You collapse infinite options into one lived experience. But what does that mean outside a laboratory? Take memory. Your recollection of a childhood afternoon, the smell of monsoon earth, the slant of sunlight in your old house. Was that memory always waiting in your mind, untouched, pristine? Or does it come into being only when you focus on it, pulling it from a haze of possibility into a concrete feeling, a vivid flash in the dark? Neurologists argue that each time you remember, you rebuild the memory, reshaping it slightly, influenced by your current self, your emotions, the stories you tell. You are not a library with endless shelves of untouched books. You are a storyteller, conjuring the past with every act of remembrance, changing it just by looking. Now, extend this to your relationships. Think of someone you know deeply, your closest friend, your mother, your partner. When you're with them, are you simply witnessing who they are? Or does your attention, your belief, your expectation shape who they become in your presence? Psychologists call this the Pygmalion effect. The observer's expectation transforms the observed. When a teacher expects greatness, the student rises. When a friend sees only flaws, the other withers. Your gaze carves reality into shape, sometimes more than the observed even realizes. But what about the moments when you stop looking? What's left when your attention is withdrawn? Imagine a childhood toy, long forgotten in the attic. Is it still a bright red truck, waiting patiently for your return, or does it blur, become nothing more than a vague notion, lost, unshaped, neither real nor unreal until you look again? On a cosmic scale, this idea is dizzying. Does the moon exist when no one's watching? Does the universe pulse onward in the silence between observations, or does it, in some unfathomable way, wait for an observer to bring it to life? The philosopher Bishop Berkeley argued centuries ago that to be is to be perceived. In some sense, the world waits for your glance, for consciousness to wake it up from the depths of pure possibility. Yet, there's a price. If reality is, in some way, built by attention, then what you choose to see, and what you ignore, becomes terrifyingly powerful. Ignore your grief, and it grows in the dark, unseen but monstrous. Deny your shadow, and it takes on a life of its own. Focus only on your failures, and the world shrinks to a prison of judgment. But look with compassion, curiosity, love, and even the harshest truths begin to soften and shift. The observer doesn't just collapse the world. They flavor it, tint it, bend it with every feeling, every lens, every prejudice or hope. This is why moments of stillness feel so radical. Sit quietly, eyes closed, letting attention drift inward. What is left when you stop grasping for meaning, stop searching for something to watch? Do you disappear, or does some deeper awareness remain? An observer who cannot be seen, but who is the source of all seeing? Mystics across cultures claim that in the deepest silence, the line between observer and observed dissolves. There is no you watching the world. There is only awareness, pure and undivided, through which the world arises and subsides. Yet, try to grasp this with words, and it slips away. Try to observe the observer, and you find nothing solid. just a stream of noticing, an endless loop. Who is watching the watcher? Where does the chain end? Neuroscientists hunt for a center in the brain that contains the self, the ultimate observer. But every scan, every probe finds only patterns, no single eye, just billions of neurons firing, a storm of attention flickering across a dark landscape. The observer is everywhere and nowhere, both the stage and the actor, both the camera and the scene. And yet, life must go on. You open your eyes and the world returns. But now, something is different. You realize your gaze is not neutral. It is creative, transformative. With every act of looking, you bring the world into sharper focus, infusing it with your fears, your longings, your questions. When you stop looking, things recede, blur, or perhaps simply wait in the wings for consciousness to return. The observer creates, and the world is its masterpiece, unfinished, uncertain, ever-changing, waiting for you to look again and give it form. So the next time you stare into the night sky, or close your eyes and feel the pulse of your own heart, remember, you are not just a spectator. You are the artist and the architect, and the universe itself is waiting to see what you will choose to notice next. The observer that creates. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in a room, alone, watching sunlight trickle through the window. You're still, silent, just observing. It feels like you're separate from everything you see, as if life unfolds out there, and you simply watch. But what if this separation is only an illusion? What if the very act of watching, of being the observer, doesn't just record reality, but reshapes it? What if your gaze is not passive but powerful? So powerful that without it, reality itself changes, bends, or even collapses. This isn't just a philosophical musing. It's a truth echoed in the deepest chambers of science, psychology, and ancient wisdom. The story starts with something small, so small in fact that it can't even be seen without the world's most powerful instruments. In the quantum world, the tiniest particles don't behave like marbles rolling on a floor. They behave more like clouds of possibility, existing everywhere and nowhere until someone or something observes them. The famous double-slit experiment, repeated by physicists for over a century, shows that a photon, a single particle of light, acts like a wave, a blur of potential, until it is measured or watched. The moment it is observed, it becomes one thing, one location, one reality. The observer changes what is observed. Now, zoom out from the quantum world and ask, does this strange truth end at the edge of the microscope, or does it echo through every part of existence? Consider how you experience your own life. Do you believe you're simply a passive spectator, or is there something about your attention that transforms the world around you? Imagine walking down a busy street. Most faces blur into a background noise until your eyes lock with someone. In that instant, the world narrows and a new story begins. Or think about the way you look at your own memories. Recall a childhood moment and notice how, by bringing it into focus, you change it. The act of remembering sharpens certain details and lets others fade. Your observation is not just noticing, it's sculpting. But the question lingers, what happens when you stop looking? If watching shapes reality, does reality lose its shape when you look away? In a sense, yes. In everyday life, unattended details slip into obscurity. That painting in the hallway you haven't noticed in months, the subtle creak of the floor, the precise hue of the sky at sunset, all these become ghostly, half-formed until your attention returns to them. But this goes deeper. Psychologists have long understood that our perception is not a camera passively recording the world. Instead, our brain edits, colors, and reinterprets every signal it receives. There are famous experiments where people, asked to watch a video and count how many times a ball has passed, fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. What isn't watched, in a sense, does not exist for us. Reality is a construction, built not just by the outside world, but by the act of paying attention. Take this one step further. Relationships, careers, even your own sense of self. These are not static objects waiting to be found. They grow, evolve, and sometimes dissolve based on how much you watch them. Ignore a friend long enough, and the friendship dims. Pour attention into a skill, and it flourishes. Your act of observing, of giving focus and energy, is not neutral. It's creative. You are the artist, and reality is your ever-changing canvas. But what about those moments when you stop looking? When your attention withdraws, through fatigue, boredom, or despair, things fall apart. Neglected relationships atrophy. Talents rust. Dreams lose their vibrance. In the darkness of neglect, reality dissolves into potential, waiting for someone to notice and bring it to life. Consider the phenomenon of object permanence in infants. For a baby, if something is hidden behind a blanket, it effectively stops existing until it returns to sight. As adults, we believe we've outgrown this, but in truth, every one of us lives inside a bubble of attention. What we do not observe, what we do not notice, fades from our personal universe. Think of places that seem haunted, not by ghosts, but by neglect. Abandoned houses, silent libraries, forgotten alleys. When no one looks at them, they slip into another reality, one of silence, dust, and echoing emptiness. Only when someone enters, opens a door, shines a flashlight, does the world there become real again. Snap into focus, color, and noise. It's as if the act of observation stitches reality together from the loose threads of possibility. But this power is not only personal, it is collective. When enough people focus on an idea, a cause, a movement, it becomes real in a way it never was before. Civil rights, new technologies, artistic revolutions, all start as observations, ideas given attention until their reality reshapes the world itself. The observer is not just you alone, it is us together, deciding which parts of reality deserve to be made real. The story gets stranger. In cutting-edge physics, some thinkers believe the universe itself might only become definite when it is observed. The cosmos, vast and indifferent, filled with dark matter and silent stars, could be waiting to be noticed, collapsing from probability into reality whenever a conscious being stares up into the sky and wonders, what's out there? The act of asking the question creates the answer, or at least brings a slice of possibility into sharp relief. But what does this mean for your own life? It means that your act of watching, of observing, of bringing awareness to anything, big or small, is an act of creation. You're not just witnessing your days, you're shaping them. When you wake in the morning and choose what to notice, the light on the wall, the mood of a loved one, the ache or hope inside your chest, you are collapsing possibilities into reality. You are the observer that creates. If you fail to notice, if you let your attention scatter and fade, your world grows dim, full of blind spots, half-lived moments, relationships that exist only in memory or in the hope of being remembered. Consider a scientist peering into a microscope, searching for signs of life. Their attention, their focused observation, brings a world into being, one that would not exist without that gaze. Now realize that you, every day, are that scientist, and your own life is the experiment. Your choices of where to look, what to remember, who to listen to, and what to ignore determine the very fabric of your existence. But there's a warning in this too. Because with this power comes responsibility. What happens when you stop looking? When you choose to ignore suffering, injustice, or even the subtle beauty in the everyday, you allow those realities to vanish, to become invisible, not just to you, but to the shared world. Every time you avert your gaze, a piece of reality is lost. Every time you pay attention, something is rescued from oblivion. You might wonder, can we ever see the whole picture? Can we ever observe enough to know what's really real? The answer is both humbling and exhilarating. No, because reality is too vast for any single observer. Yes, because every moment of attention is a moment of creation. The universe is not complete without you, the observer. And so, you are both participant and creator, sculptor and sculpture. So, the next time you find yourself drifting, detached, believing you are simply a spectator to the theater of life, remember, the stage is lit only where you look. The actors play their roles only under the beam of your attention. And when you look away, the curtain falls, the scene fades, and the play is rewritten in the shadows, waiting for the next gaze to bring it alive. In this way, you are not just an observer of reality. You are its author, its light, its animator. Life is not something you watch. It is something you shape, moment by moment, choice by choice, with the simple, mysterious, and endlessly powerful act of looking. And so the next time you ask, what's left when you stop looking, remember, reality waits in the wings, silent and unfinished, until you choose to see. And in choosing to see, you create the world anew. The thought that eats itself. Close your eyes for a moment and turn your awareness inward, not to your breath, not to the room around you, just to your own thoughts, the flow of thinking. Listen, what do you find? For most, thought is a river, ceaseless and noisy. But what happens when that river turns and looks back at its own source? What if you try to think about the act of thinking itself? The result isn't clarity. It's more like a snake that, finding nothing left to eat, turns and swallows its own tail, or, more dangerously, its own brain. This is recursion, the infinite loop, the paradox at the core of consciousness, the thought that eats itself. Imagine you're sitting in a silent room. There's no distraction, no sound, just the echo of your mind. You try to notice your next thought. The very act of waiting for a thought changes what that thought will be. You are not just thinking, you're observing yourself thinking, which triggers a cascade of self-observation. Each time you notice your mind, another part of your mind peeks in and watches the watcher. You peel back layer after layer, hunting for the core of who's doing the thinking. Yet, with every step, you find only another mask, another watcher, another mirror reflecting a mirror. This is the hall of infinite reflection, the recursion that feels like drowning in yourself. Philosophers have chased this puzzle for millennia. René Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." But even Descartes faced the crisis. Who is the I that is doing the thinking? If you keep turning your attention inward, seeking the original thinker, the ground beneath you starts to crumble. Buddhism calls this anatta, the doctrine of no self. There is no stable core, just thought observing thought, like a camera pointed at its own lens. The deeper you look, the more the sense of a stable me flickers and dissolves. Modern neuroscience backs this up. The brain is a web of feedback loops, electrical storms referencing themselves, with no single point of origin. There is no homunculus inside your head, no tiny person behind your eyes pulling levers. There is only the endless swirl. Try this. Ask yourself, what am I about to think? You wait, you watch, a thought bubbles up. You see it, catch it, try to observe where it comes from. But the very act of observing has changed it. The observer is now also the observed. It's as if you are a snake, mouth open, jaws unhinged, trying to swallow the source of your own being. There is no final answer, only recursion, only loops. Let's take a real-world example. Have you ever had a moment of intense self-consciousness, on stage or in front of a camera, when you become so aware of your own thoughts that you lose the ability to simply be? Suddenly you're not just acting naturally, you're thinking about how you're thinking, worried about how you're worrying, anxious about your anxiety. Each layer piles on, making it impossible to move or speak without a sense of paralyzing awkwardness. The mind collapses in on itself, suffocating in loops. This is social recursion, a feedback loop so tight it strangles spontaneity. There is no you left, just a churning whirlpool of thoughts about thoughts. Or consider the insomniac, lying in the dark, desperate to sleep. The more they try to stop thinking, the more they think about not thinking. The effort to control thought only multiplies the awareness of thought. Don't think about the pink elephant. And suddenly, that's all your mind can produce. The mind tries to grab itself by the throat and ends up choking on the effort. The harder you search for silence, the louder the mind becomes. This is the thought that eats itself, the snake swallowing its own mind, never reaching an end, just tightening circles. The recursion of thought doesn't just live in the individual mind. It haunts all of philosophy and science. The classic liar paradox, this statement is false, is a linguistic loop that devours itself. If the statement is true, then it must be false. If it's false, then it must be true. Logic collapses, caught in its own jaws. The same happens with Zeno's paradoxes, or in mathematics with Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Any sufficiently complex system can't be complete and consistent at the same time. The rules of the system, when examined from inside, unravel themselves. In psychology, recursive thought can spiral into obsession and madness. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a trap of meta-thinking, not just a fear of germs, but a fear of fearing germs. Not just an urge to check the stove, but an urge to check the urge to check. Meta-anxiety becomes the root anxiety. You can spend a lifetime fighting shadows, each shadow cast by the previous attempt to analyze your own mind. In philosophy, this is called the regress problem. If every explanation demands another explanation, then you fall forever, never landing anywhere solid. This is the secret terror and strange beauty of consciousness, the ability to reflect on itself, but never to escape itself. We are not machines that simply compute. We are mirrors that reflect mirrors, worlds inside worlds, endlessly folding inward. The thought that eats itself is the cost of self-awareness. Without it, we'd be animals, reacting, never pausing to wonder. With it, we become haunted by endless questions. Who is thinking? Who is observing? What is left when thought finally consumes itself? Artists and poets have felt this strange hunger too. Jorge Luis Borges wrote stories about mirrors that breed reflections until reality itself dissolves. The philosopher Alan Watts compared consciousness to a flashlight that cannot illuminate its own bulb. If you point the beam at itself, you're left blind. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre described this as nausea, the sick feeling that arises when consciousness becomes too aware of itself, floating without anchor, suspended in endless loops. Is there a way out? Maybe. Some traditions suggest you can break the loop by simply witnessing without analysis. Let thought come and go. Don't chase the source. Don't try to observe the observer. Let the snake be, and it will uncoil. Meditation teachers advise, don't just do something, sit there. In those moments, awareness relaxes and the feedback loop unwinds into peace. The thought no longer eats itself. It simply dissolves, like a wave folding back into the ocean. But most of us live inside the recursion. We analyze our thoughts, then analyze the analysis, then doubt the doubting. We become shadows chasing shadows, haunted by the impossibility of ever finding the first cause. It's humbling, and a little terrifying. The ego, so proud of its power to think, discovers it is built on sand. Nothing but loops upon loops, patterns eating patterns. In the end, the thought that eats itself is not a flaw, but a strange gift. It reminds us that the mind, for all its cleverness, is a puzzle box with no bottom. Every answer births another question. Every observation becomes something to observe. This is what makes us human, not our ability to find conclusions, but our willingness to live inside the beautiful, dizzying infinity of recursion. So, the next time you catch yourself thinking about thinking, worrying about worrying, or doubting your own doubts, remember, you are not broken. You are experiencing the fundamental recursion at the heart of consciousness. The snake swallows its own brain, not out of hunger, but out of wonder. And perhaps, in the silence beyond the endless loops, you'll find not a final answer, but the freedom to let go. Let thought return to thought. Let the river flow without searching for its source. The self dissolves, not in defeat, but in liberation. In the end, you are not the thinker trapped in an endless loop. You are the loop itself, forever folding, forever becoming, forever free. The time that consumes meaning. Close your eyes and listen for a moment, not just to my words, but to the hush beneath them. Somewhere inside you, there's a memory of something that once mattered so deeply it hurt. A love, a purpose, a dream, a secret you whispered to yourself at midnight. You held it tight, sure it was the axis on which your world spun. Now try to return to that feeling, perfectly, as it was then. Try to summon it whole, with all the urgency and trembling it carried. But time stands between you and that lost moment, doesn't it? Time blurs the edges. What was once vivid is now a ghostly outline, a muted photograph, a memory left out in the rain. The meaning you once clung to with desperate certainty has faded, softened, maybe even vanished. Why does this happen? Is meaning just a trick? A beautiful illusion that can't survive the erosion of time? Or is there something about the very nature of existence that demands meaning must always be devoured by the passing hours? This is the paradox of time and meaning. Everything that feels urgent, true, or even sacred in a single moment is always at risk of becoming ordinary, forgotten, or meaningless later on. And yet, while it lasts, it feels as real as anything can be. Think of the first time you fell in love, the way your world was rewired, the sudden electrical charge in every glance, the infinite futures you built in your mind. That meaning was atomic. It split you open. But years later, can you even touch that sensation with bare hands? Or is it a story you tell about yourself? A meaning that has changed, shrunk, or dissolved with the ticking of the clock. If time can erase the very feeling that defined you, what does that say about meaning itself? Was it ever truly there? Or was it always on loan from the future, destined to be recalled and consumed? The truth is, time isn't just a river carrying you forward. It's an acid, dissolving everything you try to hold. Old victories lose their shine. Grief softens into silence. Even the worst pain becomes memory, then faint shadow, then barely a shape at all. Sometimes we fight this. We keep souvenirs, we tell stories, we tattoo names into our skin, we cling to rituals hoping to preserve what's passing. But time has infinite patience. It waits, and eventually, every artifact loses its charge. Look at old photos. Faces that once defined your reality become strangers. Letters you wrote in desperation now seem naive, or even alien. The places where you learned your hardest lessons become parking lots, ruins, or forests reclaimed by moss. This isn't just nostalgia, it's the universe reminding you that meaning is not absolute. It's always slipping through your fingers. This raises the most haunting question of all. If meaning can fade, was it ever real? Is meaning just a chemical reaction, dopamine and memory wiring firing in your brain for a while, then dying off? Or is it a cosmic law, written in the fabric of reality? Why is it that a single event can feel like the center of the universe, only to vanish into insignificance as years pass? And why do we still chase meaning, knowing time will eventually erase it? Is it courage? Is it delusion? Or is it the deepest law of what it means to be human? To create meaning even as the clock devours it? Think about ancient civilizations, their gods, their wars, their art, their love stories. Entire empires once burned with meaning so intense that people would die for an idea, a flag, a word carved in stone. But where is that meaning now? Who aches for the worries of a lost Babylonian merchant or the dreams of a medieval scribe? Those meanings were everything, and now they are less than dust. Even the language they spoke is mostly forgotten, mere echoes in the vaults of history. But for them, their meanings were real enough to shape destinies, build cities, collapse worlds. Meaning, it seems, is always real while you're inside it. It's the oxygen of the present moment. But time has a way of turning all oxygen into mere wind. There are modern examples too. The heartbreak that shattered you in high school, the cause you believed in at 20, the ambition that got you out of bed every day. Maybe you abandoned that dream or achieved it, or lost it to circumstances you never controlled. Now, looking back, does the meaning remain as intense? Or does it flicker, growing dimmer with each year that passes? Why do you think midlife crises exist? Why do people feel empty when they finally get everything they thought they wanted? Because the meaning changed. Time ate it. What felt like the ultimate destination became just another mile marker, blurred by the velocity of years. Some people try to outwit time. They create legacies, hoping to anchor their meaning in something lasting. Books, businesses, children, philosophies. But even these are not immune. The oldest books gather dust in forgotten libraries. The most successful businesses collapse or become footnotes. Children grow up, make their own meanings, move on. Even philosophies are rewritten, replaced, debated, lost. What then can resist the hunger of time? Is there anything that can survive the fade? This is where the paradox sharpens. If nothing endures, why do we create meaning at all? Why do we love, build, strive, suffer? Why do we give our lives to causes that might dissolve a decade after we're gone? Is it ignorance or is it wisdom? Perhaps it's both. Perhaps meaning isn't a fixed object that time can break. Perhaps meaning is the act of giving, the energy you pour into a moment, knowing it will fade but choosing it anyway. Perhaps meaning is not something that exists outside of time, but only inside it, a fire that burns brightest because it knows it will go out. Here's a story. Imagine a monk in an ancient temple, spending decades painting an intricate sand mandala, grain by grain, with infinite patience and devotion. When the mandala is finally finished, radiant in all its glory, the monk sweeps it away in a single breath, letting the wind carry it off. Is the meaning lost? Or was the meaning in the act of creation, in the attention, the surrender, the acceptance of impermanence? Maybe that's the answer. Maybe meaning is not meant to last forever. Maybe its very beauty comes from the certainty that it will be lost. Maybe what matters is not whether meaning survives, but whether you gave yourself fully to it while it was here. Or maybe there's something deeper still. Maybe time doesn't actually erase meaning, but transforms it. The love you felt, the pain you endured, the things that once seemed life or death, they become compost for new meanings, the silent architecture of your current self. You are made of meanings you've forgotten. Your present clarity is built on the bones of past confusion. What you learn from a fading purpose is that all meaning is process, not product. It's river, not rock. So why does time consume meaning? Perhaps because meaning is alive. It moves, grows, and eventually dies, so that something new can take its place. If meaning could never fade, there would be no room for new dreams, new loves, new reasons to rise in the morning. The very fact that meaning is temporary is what gives it power. Knowing it will vanish, you treasure it more. Knowing it's fragile, you pour your heart in more completely. That's not a flaw. It's the secret that gives meaning its bite. But still, the ache remains. The feeling that something was real, and now it's gone. You can mourn for lost meanings, lost friendships, lost dreams, lost versions of yourself. That's honest. That's being human. The grief for lost meaning is a sign you once cared. It means you were awake, alive, here. Don't let time's erosion turn you to stone. Use it. Let the loss of meaning teach you how to give even more to the present. Let it remind you to love harder, to listen deeper, to risk everything for what matters right now. So, was meaning ever real, if time can erase it? Yes. It was real in the moment you felt it, and that's enough. Meaning is not a monument built to survive eternity. It's a flare in the darkness, brilliant, brief, but utterly necessary. Without it, time would be empty. Meaning is what makes time bearable. The fact that meaning fades doesn't make it less real. It makes it precious. And here's the final turn. Time doesn't actually erase meaning for good. It just changes it, tucks it into different corners, weaves it into new patterns. Even the most faded meanings become the soil out of which new stories grow. The ache you feel for what is lost, that's a new meaning, alive and burning. The desire to find new purpose, to keep searching, to keep loving, even knowing it will fade, that's meaning, stronger than time. So don't fear the fade. Don't clutch at meaning like a relic you must save from ruin. Instead, let meaning flow through you. Let it light you up while it lasts, and let it go when the time comes. You are here now, and this is your chance. Meaning lives for a moment. Time will devour it. But that's why it matters, because you dared to live, to love, to care, knowing that nothing lasts and doing it anyway. And in the end, maybe that's the only meaning time can never consume. The loop of choice. Let's start with a feeling. You're standing at the crossroads, time slowing down, your mind teetering on the edge of this one moment that feels like it could shape the rest of your life. Maybe it's something huge, moving to another city, choosing a partner, quitting a job. Maybe it's small, a split-second decision to turn left instead of right, to answer a call, to send a message you can't unsend. The tension is almost electric. This is the pressure of choice, the mythic weight we give to the moments when our lives branch and twist, when the future seems like wet clay, ready to be molded by our hands. But behind this sensation, this rush of control, there lurks a disturbing paradox. Every time you stand at that crossroads, every time you're about to make a choice, you can't shake the feeling that the future you're about to create has already been written somewhere, that your sense of agency is just a flickering candle in a vast storm of events you can never truly control. The loop of choice is this. Every choice feels like it creates the future, but the very act of choosing seems to require that future to already exist, waiting for you to discover it, as if you're reading a book you can't help but follow, even as you tell yourself you're writing the next page. Let's go deeper. Why does this illusion grip us so tightly? Think about how we tell stories, to ourselves and to others. We love tales of the one decision that changed everything. How a single word, a single moment, could ripple forward, creating whole worlds that never would have existed otherwise. But under the surface, what is a choice, really? It's a calculation, a weighing of possibilities that seem open in front of you, but the mind does not experience all futures as equal. It's already leaning. You are already influenced by everything you are, your biology, your upbringing, your fears, your secret hopes, your habits, even the things you forgot you ever learned. Each choice is filtered through a storm of unconscious calculations before you ever make it. The illusion of choice is that, standing at that crossroads, you feel completely free, but you are also the sum of every influence that shaped you, and you cannot truly imagine what it would be like to stand there as someone else, with a different history, different wounds, different dreams. If you chose differently, it's only because you were different in that split second. So, which comes first, the chooser or the choice? Let's explore the science. Modern neuroscience suggests that by the time you consciously make a decision, your brain has already started the process. In famous experiments, subjects are asked to push a button whenever they feel like it. Scanners show that brain activity indicating a choice happens before the person is even aware of their own intention. In other words, the machinery of choice is already whirring beneath the surface before you, the storyteller, step in to claim responsibility. Your conscious mind is more like the narrator of a movie that's already playing, rationalizing, explaining, desperately trying to draw a line of logic through 1,000 invisible causes. So, when you feel that heavy burden of responsibility, ask yourself, who is carrying it? Is it your true self, or a collection of ancient impulses dressed up in the clothes of the present moment? Now, let's look at the philosophy. Imagine two possible worlds. One, where every choice you make spins the universe onto a new branch, a multiverse of infinite futures, fractal and ever-expanding, with each decision a spark that births a new cosmos. The other world is deterministic, a grand machine unwinding according to hidden laws, every thought and action, the inevitable result of what came before. In the first, you are a god of possibility, your hands on the levers of reality. In the second, you are a passenger, aware but powerless, carried along by a current far greater than you. But both worlds have a secret trap. To choose requires a set of options, but those options must already exist. The very existence of options is shaped by forces beyond you, and the choice itself, your leap into the future, seems to require that the destination already exists, waiting to be reached. You're stuck in a loop. Does the act of choosing create the future, or does the future create the illusion of choice? Let's bring in examples. Think of chess grandmasters. To an amateur, each move seems like a new beginning, a wild world of possibilities. But for the master, each move is a narrowing, a funneling of the game toward the only logical outcome. The best players don't choose among infinite possibilities. They see the inevitable sequence unrolling before them, a path dictated by the position, the psychology of the opponent, the logic of the board. The choice is an illusion. There was only ever one real move. Now, take relationships. You meet someone, you fall in love. It feels miraculous, like fate. One choice, one yes, and a new world blooms. But look closer. The timing, your emotional state, your history, even the words you spoke or didn't speak, these all conspired to make that choice feel inevitable. If anything in your past had shifted, you might never have met. But standing there, it feels like you chose, when, in reality, it was the culmination of 1,000 tiny nudges, most invisible, stretching back through your life, and even before you were born. But if the future already exists, waiting for us to choose it, why do we feel the agony and ecstasy of decision? Why do we fear regret? Here is where the loop twists on itself. The human mind is addicted to narrative, to meaning. We want to believe that every choice is the creation of something new, a little rebellion against fate. Regret is the shadow side of this urge. We imagine that, had we chosen differently, another world would have been born, another self would have existed. But what if that self, that world, was never truly an option? What if the agony of regret is built on the false belief that you could have been someone else, when in truth you were always going to be the person you are, standing here now, tracing the path you were always going to walk? Let's shift perspective. Think about the universe as a wave of potential collapsing into actuality. Quantum physics tells us that, before observation, particles exist in a haze of probabilities, only snapping into one state when measured. Is life like this? Are we walking clouds of possibility, only becoming real in the moment of choice? Or is the act of observing, of deciding, just the closing of a door that was always going to close, the snap of a thread pulled tight by a pattern older than memory? If you watch yourself closely, you'll notice, after every choice, the sense of possibility vanishes. The future narrows, the world solidifies, and what was once an ocean of maybes becomes a single, inescapable now. Was the choice ever real, or did you only realize what was always going to happen? But let's not drown in fatalism. Here's the paradox that haunts every conscious being. Even if every choice is the result of invisible currents, even if the future exists before we step into it, our experience of choosing is the most intense, meaningful, terrifying thing we ever feel. It is the drama of being alive, standing in the storm of time, the crossroads lit by the lightning of now. Perhaps freedom is not the ability to create any future we want, but to say yes to the future that is already becoming real through us. Perhaps our agony, our hope, our regret. These are the marks of consciousness fighting against the boundaries of fate. And maybe in the end, what matters is not whether we create the future, but that we are awake enough to witness it being born, moment by moment, breath by breath, even as the loop continues. You may ask, if choice is an illusion, why does it feel so real? The answer may be this: because feeling is real. Because every second you stand at that crossroads, the universe experiences itself through your eyes, your trembling hands, your racing heart. The loop of choice is not a trap, but a mirror. It shows us who we are, not just in what we choose, but in how we experience the moment of choosing. The future may already exist, but it needs us to walk into it. The illusion of momentum, the thrill of control, these are the fire that keep us moving. The song that keeps us alive, even as the melody was written long before we heard it. So the next time you face a decision, no matter how small or how shattering, know this: the future you step into is already waiting for you. But the meaning you find in that step is yours alone. The loop of choice spins on, but you are not trapped. You are the dreamer and the dreamed, the hand and the road, the story and the teller, circling forever in the strange, beautiful paradox of what it means to be alive. The void inside awareness. Close your eyes and let the outside world dissolve for a moment. What remains? There's a presence, a raw sense of awareness, wide and intimate, the part of you that notices everything else. It feels as if this awareness is solid, full, always brimming with color, sensation, thought, emotion. Most people drift through life never questioning it, assuming that at the center of all their experiences sits a self, a thinker of thoughts, a feeler of feelings, a watcher in the darkness. But what if that's only a story the mind tells to fill the silence? What if, when you look directly into the heart of awareness, all you find is a vast, silent void? An emptiness pretending to be full, a mirror reflecting nothing but the act of looking itself. Consider a moment of pure stillness. You're lying awake at night, no distractions, no goals, just the quiet hum of being alive. Where are you in that moment? Not your body. That's just warmth and weight against the sheets. Not your thoughts. They flicker and pass, uncontrollable, like shadows. Not even your emotions, which come and go like weather across a sky. When you try to pinpoint what is aware, you find nothing you can grab, no place to rest. There's just an open space, a vastness in which every experience happens, but which itself remains untouched, unmoved, almost eerily silent. You might expect to find someone at the center of awareness, a true self, a me pulling the strings. But each time you turn your gaze inward, the search comes up empty. The more closely you inspect awareness, the less there is to find. Thoughts are seen, sensations are felt. But who is seeing? Who is feeling? Try to catch the observer, and all you ever find is another thought, another sensation, a new feeling. And behind that, nothing but space. Awareness is like a perfectly polished mirror that reflects everything but itself. No matter how hard you look, there's nothing staring back. This isn't just a trick of language or philosophy. It's a discovery woven into the deepest traditions of human contemplation. Buddhist meditation asks you to look for the self, for the thing that suffers, the thing that desires, the thing that resists the flow of life. Every time you look, you find only fleeting experiences, a thought, a tension, a memory, a taste of hope or regret. Each one arises and falls away. None of them are you. The core, the place you think of as I, turns out to be empty, an open void where experience unfolds and then disappears, leaving no trace behind. But why does awareness feel so full, so substantial, if it's really just empty space? The answer is that consciousness is a master illusionist. It builds a convincing show from sensations, emotions, the sense of being a self. It projects meaning onto a blank screen. When sadness arises, the screen seems filled with sadness. When anxiety flares, the whole space trembles. But underneath, the screen itself never changes. Like a movie theater showing 1,000 films, the awareness that watches them remains perfectly still, untouched by the drama, never taking on the pain or the joy, only allowing it to play through for a while. This illusion isn't harmless. It gives rise to suffering. If you believe the parade of thoughts and feelings is proof of a real, enduring self, you start to defend it, to cling to its pleasures, to fear its losses. You become caught in a cycle of craving and aversion, protecting a self that, on close inspection, isn't there at all. Every disappointment, every argument, every sleepless night is just the screen getting smudged, a feeling of lack trying to fill a void that was never meant to be filled. We chase fullness, never seeing that the chase itself is a symptom of forgetting the open space beneath. Imagine you're watching a movie and, for a split second, you remember that you're sitting in a dark room. The characters on the screen fade, the story loses its grip. The drama is still happening, but suddenly it's weightless, just flickers of light on a blank canvas. Life is like that too. The moment you see through the illusion of a solid, central self, you realize that everything you experience is simply arising and dissolving in awareness, painting colors on the void, but never changing its essence. Some people fear this emptiness, thinking it means their life is meaningless or cold. But the void inside awareness isn't a dead space. It's the birthplace of everything. It's the wide-open possibility that lets each experience arise fresh and new. In this emptiness, you're not isolated. The boundaries between you and the world, inside and outside, begin to dissolve. There's no longer a watcher separate from the watched. There's just a seamless flow, a vivid aliveness, free from the old burden of defending a self that never existed. But don't take this as just an idea. Look for yourself. Sit quietly and notice whatever comes. Watch a thought appear, dance and fade. Feel an emotion, see how it rises and falls in its own time. Ask quietly, who is aware of this? And watch as the question echoes in emptiness, unanswered. You might feel a tremor of fear, a surge of resistance, a moment of vertigo as the familiar sense of self falls away. Let it come and go. Beneath it, the space remains, untouched, eternal, open. This is the void inside awareness, silent, clear, ungraspable, but paradoxically more intimate than any self you could imagine. The mind tries to fill it with stories, feelings, identities, but the space is always there, underneath it all, patient, quiet, impossible to harm or possess. And when you rest as that space, life's endless dramas unfold like sunlight on a blank wall, intense, beautiful, but never sticking, never staining what you truly are. The identity paradox spiral. What does it really mean to be yourself? Most people will say you are a product of your experiences. Each memory, each pain, every moment of triumph and defeat, carved into your mind like the rings of a tree. But this story is stranger than it seems, and at the heart of it lies a paradox that most never recognize. The paradox is this: you are shaped by your experiences, but the you that is shaped is also the very lens through which those experiences are interpreted. The self is not just a product of the past, it is also the interpreter of the past. This creates a spiral, a paradox with no easy escape. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. What you see isn't just a reflection of your face. It's a reflection of every moment you've ever lived, every heartbreak and hope, every lesson your parents tried to teach you, every mistake you've ever hidden from. But what if the mirror isn't made of glass at all? What if it's made from memories, beliefs, and interpretations that twist and warp depending on who's doing the looking? That's the identity paradox spiral. The self observing itself, endlessly shaping and being shaped. Think about your earliest childhood memory. Maybe it's the warmth of sunlight through the window, or the sting of being left out on a playground. Whatever it is, the way you remember it now is not the way you experienced it then. Your adult self, with all its wisdom and scars, looks back and makes sense of that memory with new eyes. You reinterpret the child's sadness as a lesson in resilience, or you see a random moment of joy as evidence that you were always meant to be an optimist. The past is never dead. It is rewritten each time you recall it, edited by the current version of you. But here's the twist. The current version of you was created by those same memories. You are the sculptor in the clay, caught in a spiral, where every chisel mark both forms and is formed by the hand holding it. Neuroscience shows us that memory isn't a perfect playback of events. Every time you recall something, your brain reconstructs it, blending facts with interpretation, filling gaps with emotion or even outright fiction. You think you're reliving an experience, but you're really building it anew from the scaffolding of who you are today. This means your self is never fixed. Each recollection is both a reflection of the old and a construction of the new. You are, in a very real sense, the sum of your self-edited stories. Now ask yourself, have you ever tried to change? Maybe you wanted to break a bad habit, overcome a fear, or become someone braver, kinder, more disciplined. Did you notice how difficult it was? That's because the self doing the changing is the same self that must be changed. The person who wants to overcome fear is still the same person who learned long ago that fear was a useful response. The child who hid from conflict grew into the adult who avoids hard conversations. But now, as an adult, you reinterpret those childhood choices. Sometimes with understanding, sometimes with blame. Yet all along, your very ability to judge your old self is a product of the spiral. You became someone who could only see things this way because you had those experiences in the first place. The spiral goes deeper. Consider relationships. Every friend, lover, or enemy you've ever had shaped you in some way. But how you remember those relationships today is shaped by who you have become. Maybe you look back on a lost friendship and think, I was naive, or I was betrayed. Yet another person with a different set of experiences might see the same events as proof of loyalty or courage. Your interpretation isn't a static truth. It's a reflection of what your mind is capable of seeing, because of everything it has already seen. Every new experience is filtered through the lens ground by all previous ones, reinforcing or challenging your sense of identity. This is why people can experience the same event so differently. Imagine two siblings growing up in the same household. One remembers their father as stern but fair, the other as cold and distant. Both are telling the truth as they experienced it. But the spiral of identity means their reactions, beliefs, and even the way their brains process the world are different, shaped by countless micro-experiences and previous interpretations. They are not simply two people with different memories. They are two people whose very ability to remember is shaped by who they are, and who they are is shaped by what they remember. And it's not just personal history. Society, culture, language all play their role in the spiral. The words you use to describe yourself, brave, anxious, creative, broken, are not just private labels. They are gifts and curses handed down by others, adopted and internalized, becoming part of your story. The stories you tell yourself about who you are shaped by the stories society tells about people like you. Yet, as you adopt those stories, you become someone who sees the world in a particular way, reinforcing the spiral. You are both the author and the reader of your own story, forever editing, forever being edited. Even trauma and healing exist within this spiral. People who have suffered deeply often spend years or decades reframing their pain, first as senseless, then as meaningful, sometimes as both. Healing is not just about accepting what happened. It is about becoming the kind of person who can interpret what happened in a new way. Yet, this very act of interpretation is only possible because of all the experiences, interpretations, and identities that came before. The spiral spins on, sometimes tightening, sometimes loosening, but never breaking entirely. Philosophy has long wrestled with this idea. The ship of Theseus asks, if every plank of a ship is replaced, is it still the same ship? The identity paradox spiral asks, if every belief, every memory, every interpretation is rewritten over a lifetime, are you still the same person? Or are you a constantly shifting mosaic of self-reflection, assembled and reassembled by the act of living? There is no final answer, only the ongoing spiral of interpretation, memory, and change. But this isn't a reason for despair. It's a call to awareness. If you are shaped by your interpretations of experience, and those interpretations are shaped by who you've become, then there is an opening, a freedom in the spiral. You can choose, little by little, which interpretations to reinforce. You can decide which stories to retell and which to let fade. By bringing awareness to the spiral, you become an active participant, not just a passive product. You can't break free of the spiral entirely, but you can guide its direction. So next time you find yourself caught in a loop of regret or nostalgia, shame or pride, remember, the you who is remembering is not the same as the you who lived it. Each version of you is both the result and the cause, both sculptor and sculpture. The identity paradox spiral is not a prison. It is the engine of growth, change, and self-understanding. In the end, you are not just a product of what has happened to you. You are the living result of how you interpret what has happened, and how those interpretations, in turn, shape the next chapter of your story. Each memory is a mirror, and each look in the mirror is a chance to become someone new. This is the spiral of identity. It never stops turning, and in its endless motion, you become both more yourself and, paradoxically, someone entirely new. The meaning container dilemma. From the moment we first ask why. As children, we begin the search for meaning, a hunger that never really leaves us. We look for answers in religion, in philosophy, in love, in work, in suffering. We want life to mean something, not just to exist. But every attempt to find meaning brings us face to face with an unspoken dilemma, a riddle so simple it hides in plain sight. Meaning has to live somewhere. Like water needs a cup, or light needs a canvas. Meaning can't just float untethered. It needs a container. So, what's the container? Is it life itself? Or is life just the empty vessel, waiting for us to fill it with our own stories, beliefs, and illusions? Think about it. Every time you reach for meaning, you're trying to fit something infinite, purpose, hope, love, explanation, into something finite. The body, the job, the relationship, the day-to-day routine. We tell ourselves that our lives matter, that the things we do echo beyond our last heartbeat, that our struggles have purpose. But when you zoom out, life can look like a stage set, bare and silent until the actors arrive and speak their lines. If you pour wine into a glass, you notice the wine. But what about the glass? What is life? The container? Or the story you're pouring into it? Philosophers have spent centuries battling this dilemma. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre declared that life is meaningless until you give it meaning. The universe by itself is cold, indifferent, and empty. Existence precedes essence, he said. You exist first, and only then do you decide what your life means. You are the wine. Life is the glass. But religious thinkers often argue the opposite. Life is the meaning, they say, and it's up to you to discover the purpose waiting for you. Hidden, maybe, but real. In that view, you are the glass, and meaning is being poured into you from something greater. God, destiny, fate, the arc of history. It's a dilemma with no easy escape. Consider the artist who paints a canvas. Is the painting meaningful because of the image, or because the blank canvas gave space for meaning to appear? Or think of music. Is the beauty in the melody, or in the silence between notes that gives the melody form? Every act of creation is an act of pouring meaning into emptiness, but if you smash the container, the meaning spills and disappears. And if you cling too tightly to the story, you forget the vessel that made the story possible. Let's look at a real-life example. Grief. When someone you love dies, the world feels hollow. The routines you once shared, the places you visited, the jokes only you understood. They become empty spaces echoing with loss. Suddenly you realize how much meaning was being poured into every detail, every habit, every object. The coffee mug is just a mug, until it becomes the last mug they used. The song on the radio is just noise, until it's the song you both dance to on a rainy afternoon. When meaning is gone, the container remains, but it feels useless, even mocking. The dilemma is raw and unanswerable. Was it life that was meaningful? Or was it only the story you told about it? Or take the scientist peering through a telescope, searching for signs of life in the cold, silent universe. The stars don't care whether we find them beautiful or terrifying. The laws of physics are indifferent. The scientist pours meaning into the stars, wonder, longing, hope. But the stars simply burn. So, is the universe the container, or are we the ones doing all the pouring, desperate to believe there is more than just empty space? Modern psychology wrestles with this too. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote that man's main concern is not to gain pleasure or to avoid pain, but rather to see a meaning in his life. But even Frankl admitted that meaning is something we create, not something we find lying on the sidewalk. The therapist's office is full of people asking, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I feel the meaning I'm supposed to feel?" The answer is slippery. Meaning is not handed to us. We construct it, shape it, guard it, sometimes lose it. But we need something, some container, to hold the fragile story we build. And what about faith? For many, religion is the answer. God is the container. The universe is meaningful because it was made with intention. But for others, this feels like painting meaning onto a blank wall and calling the wall itself divine. Is the sacredness in the ritual or in the mind that believes the ritual matters? This is the crisis of modern belief. So many traditions, so many containers, and a creeping suspicion that maybe we are the ones creating the meaning we crave. This is the secret at the heart of art, love, and loss. The mother holds her newborn and feels a tidal wave of meaning, yet the child does not know, does not care. The meaning is poured, not discovered. The writer finishes a book, and the story is alive only as long as someone reads it. Without a reader, the book is just paper and ink. Is the story real, or is it just what the reader brings to it? So what do we do, standing on this edge, clutching our stories and our empty vessels? Maybe the answer is not to choose between the container and the content, but to notice the dance between them. Life is the canvas. Meaning is the paint. Life is the glass. Meaning is the wine. Without one, the other is nothing at all. Every day you pour meaning into ordinary things. A text from a friend, a song on the radio, a cup of tea at midnight. You invest your love, your fear, your longing into the blank moments. You shape the emptiness, and in shaping it, you are shaped in return. The dilemma is unsolvable, but maybe that's the point. Maybe meaning is not something you find or create. It's what happens in the space between the container and what you pour inside. In the end, meaning and life are locked in a kind of eternal embrace. They need each other, depend on each other, vanish without each other. You can spend your days searching for the perfect vessel or the perfect story, but the truth is, they make each other real. The dilemma is not a trap, but an invitation to live, to wonder, to pour, and to be poured into. So, the next time you stare into the empty space of your life and wonder if it means anything at all, remember, the glass is waiting and the story is yours to tell. The only real tragedy is never daring to pour. The value inversion trap. Imagine holding something in your hands, something fragile, precious, the one thing you could not bear to lose. Maybe it's a relationship, a dream, a secret you've nursed for years. Maybe it's just an idea of who you are, or hope for who you might become. The more you care, the more you cling to it, the more you obsess over protecting it from the world. The moment you assign value, the moment you declare, this matters, a shadow is cast, a fear of losing what you cherish. This is the silent deal you make with meaning. Every value carries a cost, and that cost is fear. But here's the trap, hidden in plain sight. The value inversion trap is everywhere, so ordinary that most people never see it. The things you love the most hurt you the most, not because love is flawed, but because value and fear are forever entwined. If you love someone, you fear losing them. If you're proud of your work, you dread its failure. If your self-worth hangs on being seen a certain way, the slightest criticism feels like an attack on your soul. The deeper the value, the sharper the fear. And yet, the only alternative, to care about nothing, is a kind of emptiness that's even worse. But ask yourself, if you don't value something at all, was it ever worth having in the first place? What's the point of possessing what you wouldn't mourn if lost? Are you alive if you're indifferent, untouched, invulnerable? Or are you simply drifting, untethered, unscarred, and ultimately unchanged? This is the heart of the paradox. To be alive is to be vulnerable. To care is to risk heartbreak. The more meaning you invest, the more you stand to lose. And yet, that's what makes life sharp, vivid, and undeniably real. Let's step into an example. Imagine a child's favorite toy. To an outsider, it's just plastic, replaceable, one of 1,000. But to the child, it's everything. The source of comfort on dark nights, the keeper of secrets, a fragment of identity. If that toy is lost, the grief is raw, piercing, genuine. As adults, we might smile at the intensity, but it never really leaves us. We just replace toys with bigger things. Relationships, reputations, dreams. The things we value become the things we fear to lose, and the higher the value, the deeper the terror. That's why love and anxiety walk hand in hand. Why joy is always shadowed by the ache of impermanence. Now imagine someone who claims to care about nothing, to live unattached, immune to pain. It sounds wise, even powerful on the surface. But what does that actually mean? If you never risk caring, you never taste the sweetness of connection or the richness of purpose. If you can lose everything and not feel a thing, did you ever really possess it at all? There's a reason why the numb avoiders of life rarely find fulfillment. Indifference is a shield, but it's also a prison. The cost of safety is the loss of meaning. History is littered with stories of value and loss. Empires that rose on the strength of a shared vision, only to crumble when that vision was corrupted or forgotten. Artists who poured their soul into their work, risking ridicule, poverty, or obscurity, because not creating was a worse kind of death. Parents who give everything for a child, knowing that one day they must let go. Even small moments, your favorite song, your trusted friend, the old photo you keep hidden, these are anchors of value, and because of that, each one is edged with the possibility of pain. But the value inversion trap goes deeper than just the fear of loss. It starts to twist the very meaning of value itself. Sometimes, the more you fear losing something, the less you actually enjoy having it. Love turns to anxiety, pride to perfectionism, hope to dread. You start protecting what you love so fiercely that you stop living inside it and begin simply defending it against imaginary threats. The fear grows bigger than the thing itself, and sometimes the very act of clinging suffocates the value you meant to protect. Think about the couple so afraid of drifting apart that they stop being honest, building walls of silence in the name of safety. Or the artist who becomes paralyzed by the fear of ruining their masterpiece, never touching the canvas again. The value inversion trap is when the fear of loss eclipses the joy of possession. When you love a thing so much, you can no longer touch it without anxiety. When you hold your breath every time you check your bank account, or flinch at every notification on your phone, or scan your loved one's face for the slightest sign of disappointment. The trap is not just about fear. It's about inversion, where value becomes the source of suffering, not joy. But what's the way out? Is there a way to value something deeply, to love fiercely, to care with all your heart, without being destroyed by the fear of losing it? The answer is not detachment, not numbness. It's the willingness to risk pain for the sake of living fully. It's the courage to let value and fear exist side by side, without letting the fear dictate your actions. It's the discipline to hold loosely, to love without possession, to invest in meaning even knowing it might one day break you. Paradoxically, the only way to avoid the trap is to embrace it, to acknowledge that anything worth having will hurt if lost, and that's proof of its value, not a flaw. Here's the harsh truth. The only things you don't fear losing are the things you never valued in the first place. The absence of fear is not a sign of wisdom, but a sign that nothing mattered enough to risk your heart. You can build a life where nothing can hurt you, but it will also be a life where nothing truly heals you, moves you, or transforms you. The real challenge is to value boldly, to love as if loss is inevitable, because it is. Every person you love, you will someday lose. By distance, by change, by time, by death. Every dream you chase may end in disappointment or simply fade. Every joy will eventually be memory, every achievement replaced by new ambitions. But this is not tragedy. This is the price of being alive, and it's a price worth paying. So next time you find yourself afraid of losing someone, of failing, of being misunderstood, of watching something precious slip through your fingers, remember that the fear is a signal, not a warning to shut down, but proof that you are alive, that you have risked your heart for something real. If you could lose it without caring, it was never worth having. If it hurts to lose, that means it mattered. And if it mattered, you lived. The more you care, the deeper the ache, but also the richer the joy, the more profound the transformation. The value inversion trap wants you to believe that the safest life is the best life. But the truth is, only the vulnerable are truly alive. Only those who dare to love, to strive, to invest, to lose and grieve and begin again, ever really taste what it means to be human. If you value something, fear will come. Let it come. Don't run. Let the ache sharpen your attention, deepen your gratitude, remind you to hold the moment as tightly as you dare. But don't let fear choke out joy or turn your love into armor. Let meaning and loss dance together, as they always have, and you will discover that life's greatest worth is found in what you were willing to risk everything for, even if it broke your heart in the end. And so, the more you value, the more you fear. That is the cost, and that is the gift. A life without fear is a life without meaning. But a life with meaning, even laced with loss, is a life worth living. Again and again, for as long as you are here. The reality certainty collapse. Imagine for a moment that you wake up and everything around you is exactly as you expect. The light in your room, the weight of your body, the distant hum of life outside your window. It feels ordinary, trustworthy, solid. You touch the wall and it pushes back. You speak a word and your own voice returns. You feel utterly certain. This is reality. But then, somewhere deep inside, a doubt flickers. How do you actually know this is real? Is there any proof, undeniable, unshakable, airtight, that what you experience isn't some elaborate illusion? That question is the doorway into the reality certainty collapse, a phenomenon that unravels the fabric of existence, thread by thread, until what you called real dissolves into fog. Let's pull at the first thread. Every tool you use to prove reality, your senses, your reason, your memory, even the words in your mind, are themselves inside the very reality you're trying to prove. It's like trying to pull yourself out of a swamp by tugging on your own hair, or using a mirror to check if the mirror exists. You see, touch, hear, and taste the world. But those sensations are electrical signals inside a brain you've never actually seen directly. You use logic to argue for existence, but that logic is built from assumptions you've never tested outside your own mind. Every foundation rests on another foundation, each one vanishing into the same mist as soon as you look closely. It's a hall of mirrors, reflections chasing each other into infinity, but never escaping the glass. This is not just a philosophical game. Imagine you're living in a simulation, a perfect one, with every atom and sensation constructed so convincingly that you never find a glitch. How would you know? Every test you could invent, every experiment, every measurement would be simulated too. Even your sense of doubt, your suspicion, would be part of the script. The tools you'd use to prove reality are part of the very thing in question. There's no Archimedean point, no spot outside the universe to stand and declare, yes, this is real. The collapse happens because, in searching for proof, you realize that you have to assume what you're trying to prove. You can't climb out of the box when you're made of the same material as the box. But maybe you turn to science for rescue. Science is built on evidence, after all. But evidence comes through senses, through measurements interpreted by human minds. Even the most powerful telescope, the most precise particle detector, reports back as blips and signals to a consciousness trapped behind its own eyes. We trust in consistency, in repeatable experiments, in mathematics, but all of these are languages we made to describe a world we never truly touched directly. Every law, every constant, every discovery is filtered through our brains, and if the universe itself is a trick or a dream, all our brilliant science is a dreams within a dream. The philosopher Descartes called this the evil demon hypothesis, the idea that a powerful being could be deceiving you about everything, including the rules themselves. You can never rule it out completely, no matter how much you want to. So, what anchors existence? If you can't stand outside reality to check it, if you can't peel away the last layer to reveal the truth beneath, is there any anchor at all? The only thing that seems to remain, when you strip away every external proof, every test, every sense, every argument, is the undeniable experience of being. I think, therefore, I am, Descartes famously said, but even this is just a starting point. You know there is something happening, awareness, a stream of perceptions, thoughts, sensations, but you don't know what causes it, what it means, or if it points to a world outside. Maybe the only anchor is this, the fact of experience itself, not what you see or hear or believe, but the raw, mysterious happening of being conscious right now, for reasons you can never prove. Let's look at how this collapse can shake you. If you accept that you can't prove reality from inside it, every certainty becomes fragile. The floor beneath you feels less stable. The meaning you built on top of reality, all your dreams, fears, goals, can start to tremble because they rely on a world that could, at least in theory, be nothing but a fleeting hallucination. For some, this realization is terrifying, a plunge into existential vertigo. For others, it's liberating. If reality is not certain, maybe you're freer than you thought. Maybe you can shape your own meaning, untethered from the need for some ultimate proof. But life goes on. You get up, you eat breakfast, you smile at a friend. Even if certainty collapses, habit and hope keep you moving. Maybe that's the answer. That existence needs no anchor beyond itself, no proof beyond the raw fact of experience. Maybe the universe is a riddle that can't be solved from inside, and that's okay. Because the mystery itself is part of what it means to be alive, to wonder, to search for truth. Even if, in the end, all you find is the unprovable miracle that you are here, awake, and asking these impossible questions. The sleep of identity. You slip beneath the sheets, close your eyes, and surrender to sleep. The body stills, the thoughts drift, and the sense of self begins to dissolve. For a moment, it feels as if nothing exists at all. Then, without warning, the dream begins. You are running through a city that isn't yours, speaking with a voice you've never heard, feeling joys and terrors that don't belong to the person who brushed their teeth just an hour before. In dreams, you wear faces you've never seen, hold secrets you've never learned, and wake up convinced that those stories were somehow yours. But when morning comes, a new person rises, a self with a name, a history, a memory of yesterday. Yet, if you look closely, something isn't quite right. The person who wakes is not the same as the one who went to sleep. So, who exactly was dreaming? And who, in the end, inherits the dream? We take identity for granted. We tell ourselves that the person we are today is a simple continuation of the person we were yesterday, last year, 10 years ago. A single, unbroken thread of self, stretching across the gaps of memory and the blackouts of sleep. But neuroscience and philosophy alike suggest a stranger truth. Identity is less like a line and more like a series of islands, each night separated by an ocean of oblivion. In sleep, the self dissolves. The boundaries of personality, memory, and story vanish. You become anyone, or no one at all. Consider the strange logic of dreams. You find yourself flying above a city, certain that this is your home, even though you've never seen it before. You greet people who seem familiar, yet their faces are invented by your own mind. You fall in love, fight wars, make decisions that feel irreversible, and none of it is anchored in the waking world. Who is the you who navigates these dreamscapes? Are they a fragment, a mask, an echo? Is there a dreamer or just the dream? And when the alarm rings, there is a violent switch. The mind claws its way back to waking reality, pulling fragments of the dream into the light. You remember being chased. You remember crying or flying or confessing secrets you never knew you had. But as you try to tell the story, it slips away like water through your fingers. The self who dreamed is gone, replaced by a self who only remembers bits and pieces, sometimes with a sense of loss, sometimes with relief. We say, I had a strange dream, but who is the I who claims ownership of the dream? Is it really the same person who drifted away the night before? Research into memory and consciousness makes the puzzle even stranger. Sleep scientists know that memory formation is interrupted by sleep. Your sense of self is offline, your story put on pause. When you wake, the brain stitches together a story, convincing you that nothing was lost, that you are still you. But underneath, something has changed. The chemistry of your brain has shifted. Memories have been reshuffled, and the very sense of who you are is subtly different. Sometimes you wake up with a feeling you can't explain, a sadness, a longing, a joy. Where did it come from? Was it left behind by the dreamer? A ghostly inheritance from a self who no longer exists? Philosophers have played with this idea for centuries. John Locke wondered if a person who fell asleep and lost all memory was the same person who woke up. David Hume saw the self as a bundle of perceptions, always changing, never fixed. Modern psychologists go further. The continuity of identity is a fiction, a trick the brain plays so that we don't fall apart. Each morning, you wake as a new person, inheriting a set of memories, preferences, and habits from someone who no longer exists. The dreamer vanishes. The dream is all that remains. But why does it matter? Because it means that every night you surrender your identity and trust that something will return in the morning. A new self, who picks up the pieces and carries on. It means that life is not a smooth, unbroken line, but a collection of stories, each told by a different storyteller, each believing it is the only one. In the gap between sleep and waking, there is a silence, a reset, a chance to be reborn. This isn't just an abstract idea. It explains why you sometimes wake up with a new resolve, why trauma can fade in the night, why inspiration can strike after sleep. The self who went to bed may have been filled with doubt, regret, pain. The self who wakes may find that some of the burden has been left behind, traded for a sense of peace or clarity. In dreams, we play out our fears and desires, rewrite the scripts of our lives, and then disappear. The new self inherits not only the dream, but the possibility of change. So, the next time you drift off to sleep, ask yourself, who is letting go and who will return? The person who wakes tomorrow will not be quite the same as the one who closes their eyes tonight. There will be a gap, a mystery, a silence between you, a place where dreams bloom and die, where identity dissolves and reforms. And perhaps, in that silence, you'll catch a glimpse of the truth, that the self is not a thing, but a process, an endless becoming, shaped by the dreams it forgets and the mornings it inherits. The experience ownership paradox. Every day you move through life with a quiet, constant assumption that what you feel, you own. Your happiness is yours. Your grief is yours. Every flicker of joy, every shadow of regret, every surge of anger or hope, all are stamped mine, as if your mind is a private country and you are its king. But step a little closer. Watch your feelings as they arrive and fade, and something strange happens. You begin to notice that your emotions do not ask for permission to enter. They arrive, fully formed, sometimes loud and brash, sometimes so subtle you only notice them in hindsight. You do not command them. They simply appear, like weather rolling in, changing the landscape of your mind whether you welcome them or not. There's a paradox here. You are told to take ownership of your feelings, to own your experience, to claim your sorrow, your excitement, your confusion, as if these are possessions that sit inside a locked vault. But if you watch closely, you see the truth is much messier, much stranger. You wake one morning with an ache in your chest and cannot explain it. You meet someone and feel a sudden, inexplicable connection or dislike. You're swept away by nostalgia at the smell of rain, or rage flares at a minor insult. Where did these emotions come from? You did not order them from a menu. They arise, sometimes as old as childhood, sometimes as foreign as dreams. You claim them as mine, but do you really know where they begin or why they choose to appear? Think about a time you were overcome by sadness, so profound it left you breathless. Did you summon that feeling? Or did it descend upon you, uninvited, raw, rewriting your thoughts in real time? Or consider the rush of inspiration that comes without warning, the joy that erupts when you hear a familiar song or glimpse an old friend. These feelings shape your world, color your memories, dictate your decisions, but they are not tamed, not owned, not really under your control. They come and go as they please, often ignoring your wishes entirely. Now look at anger, the way it can rise up, boiling in your gut, hijacking your voice and your actions. How many times have you sworn to stay calm, to be above it, only to find yourself carried away by a force that feels entirely alien, yet somehow is yours? You might apologize later. I'm sorry, I wasn't myself. But what does that mean? Who was the self that claimed ownership in the first place, if feelings can hijack it so easily? Psychologists and neuroscientists have spent decades unraveling the mysteries of emotion. But the more they study, the more they find that feelings are not commands you issue, but waves you ride. Some emotions come from deep inside, automatic, ancient responses to threat or comfort. Others seem to drift in from outside, the echoes of other people's words, the emotional contagion of a crowd, the psychic residue of a parent's anxiety or a friend's laughter. You are a node in a vast web, and feelings ripple through you, shaped by history, biology, chance, and culture. But still, you claim them. You say, I am sad, I am happy, I am afraid. You wear these emotions like a name tag, as if to experience is to own. But the paradox deepens. While you claim these feelings, they are busy rewriting you in return. Neuroscience tells us that strong emotion changes the structure of your brain, the patterns of your memory, even the health of your body. A heartbreak can trigger chronic pain. A trauma can warp your sense of safety for decades, and a single moment of joy can create memories that last a lifetime. You think you are the owner of your feelings, but in truth, Your feelings are sculpting you, rewriting your habits, your preferences, your beliefs about what is possible or impossible. Take grief, for example. When loss enters your life, it does not politely knock. It invades, remapping your routines, altering your sense of time, etching itself onto your face and posture. Grief stays for weeks, months, years, then vanishes suddenly, sometimes returning without warning on a quiet afternoon. You claim this grief as my sadness. But who is the you doing the claiming, now that sadness has changed every cell and thought you possess? You are not the same self you were before it arrived. Or think about falling in love. You believe you are choosing, but love often chooses you, flaring up from nowhere, making you say and do things you swore you never would. Love writes new priorities into your brain, builds new fears and hopes, invents a version of yourself that cannot be separated from the emotion that created it. When the feeling fades or changes, you are left changed, sometimes forever. You say, "I loved," as if you were the owner of the feeling. But long after the story is over, love's fingerprints remain all over your mind. Some philosophers argue that the self is an illusion precisely because of this. There is no permanent, unchanging me who owns experience. There is only the constant flux of sensations, thoughts, feelings, and interpretations, all arising and dissolving, building a sense of ownership after the fact. Buddhism calls this anatta, the no-self, where the illusion of ownership arises because the mind stitches together moments of feeling and calls the pattern me. Modern neuroscience agrees, showing how identity is a process, not a thing, a dance of experiences that rewrite you moment by moment. Yet, culture insists on ownership. Control your emotions. Don't let feelings rule you. Take responsibility for your reactions. These commands make sense. After all, unchecked emotion can destroy relationships, wreck careers, even end lives. But at their core, these ideas reveal a desperate wish for control, for some way to hold on to the wildness inside. The truth is, ownership is never total. You can build habits, train your attention, learn to witness your emotions as they come and go. But you cannot stop them from coming, nor can you fully predict how they will change you. To be human is to be at the mercy of feelings that are not fully yours, and yet define you more than anything else. Even the simple act of trying to watch your feelings changes them. Notice how anxiety grows when you resist it, how shame deepens when you try to bury it, how joy multiplies when you share it. The observer cannot be separated from the observed. In watching your emotions, you are already changed by them. In claiming them as yours, you become their creation. This paradox can be frightening, but it is also a profound freedom. If your feelings are not fixed possessions but wild visitors, then you are not limited by who you have been or what you have felt. Each new feeling is a chance to be rewritten, to become someone new, someone unexpected. You are a story constantly being told, not the author holding the pen, but the character living on the page. So, next time you find yourself overwhelmed, remember, the storm inside is not your fault, nor is it entirely out of your hands. You cannot own your experience in the way you own a coat or a car. You can only witness, participate, ride the wave. And in the riding, you are changed. You claim your feelings as mine. You speak as if you are the master of your inner world. But in truth, you are shaped, dissolved, and reborn by every feeling that passes through. You are not the king of your kingdom. You are the kingdom itself, invaded, rebuilt, and remade by the passing armies of joy, grief, desire, fear, and just as quickly as they come, they leave. Each departure leaves you changed, sometimes subtly, sometimes in ways that split your life into before and after. There is no easy answer to the experience ownership paradox, but in the end, maybe it is enough to know that you are the witness, the battleground, the canvas, and the masterpiece is never finished. Your feelings will come uninvited, leave unannounced, and rewrite you while you watch. All you can do is watch with open eyes, meet each arrival with curiosity, and let the story of you keep unfolding, one feeling at a time. The signal without origin. There's a strange moment in every life when you realize that your thoughts aren't truly yours. Maybe you're walking alone, the city humming around you, when suddenly a memory flashes. A scent, a snatch of music, a fear, or a desire. It arrives unannounced, neither summoned nor banished, as if broadcast from somewhere outside the sealed chamber of your skull. Where do these signals come from? You believe you are the author of your inner world, the grand composer of every thought. But what if you're just the antenna, receiving messages, not creating them? Picture this. You're reading a book, so lost in its world that, for a while, you forget your own. The voice in your head starts echoing the cadence of the author, their words shaping your thoughts even after you close the cover. Or you listen to a song and its rhythm loops in your mind all day, playing without your permission, infecting your mood, hijacking your imagination. The signals arrive, vivid and persistent. But where is their true source? Are you really in charge, or just a relay station for signals whose origins are forever unknown? Philosophy and neuroscience both chase this riddle. The ancient Greeks believed in the muses, goddesses who whispered inspiration into the ears of poets and dreamers. Later, Freud and Jung wondered if the mind was a puppet theater, with conscious thought as the actor and the unconscious as the unseen director. In today's world, we see the mind as a network, an electrical field humming with patterns. Yet, the mystery lingers. When a thought appears, who or what sent the signal? Think about dreams. You close your eyes, the world dissolves, and suddenly you're somewhere else entirely. Sometimes the dream is nonsensical, a tumble of images, but sometimes it's sharp as reality, full of feelings, memories, even insights you never knew you had. You wake and marvel. Where did that come from? Was it your mind, simply replaying the day, or did something deeper, older, stranger reach up and tune the dial, broadcasting a message meant only for you? Consider déjà vu, the eerie sensation that you've lived this moment before. It's not just a feeling, it's a signal, arriving fully formed, as if someone pressed play on an old tape. Scientists debate whether it's a glitch in memory or something more, an echo from another life, a parallel reality brushing against your own. But whatever its source, the signal has no obvious origin. You don't summon it, it finds you. Or think of the creative process. Writers, artists, inventors speak of ideas that just appeared, as if plucked from the ether. The poet claims the poem wrote itself. The musician says the melody was in the air. Even scientists, hunting for the laws of the universe, describe flashes of insight that arrive while walking, showering, half asleep. There is a pattern here. The most profound thoughts do not feel self-authored. They feel received, not generated. You are the radio, not the broadcaster. But if you are just the antenna, what does that make you? Are you responsible for your thoughts, or merely the recipient? If anger surges, or desire ignites, or fear paralyzes you, did you choose that? Or did the signal simply arrive, unbidden and overwhelming? Every spiritual tradition grapples with this. Some say thoughts are not the self, that consciousness is a vast sky and thoughts are clouds passing through. Others warn of possession, of evil whispers, of inspiration that descends from the divine or the demonic. In every case, the origin of the signal is a mystery. Modern neuroscience complicates things further. Electrodes trace thoughts to the firing of neurons, chemical signals, synaptic flashes, loops of feedback. But even with all the data, a gap remains. Why this thought now? Why does an old song pop into your head during a funeral? Why do you dream of flying on nights when you are afraid? The mind is a pattern seeker, but not always a pattern maker. Sometimes, it seems, you are tuned to frequencies you cannot name, picking up signals from places you cannot see. And then, there's the question of free will. If thoughts simply arrive, what part of you chooses? Neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet have shown that the brain often decides before you become aware of deciding. The signal comes, and only then do you tell yourself a story about authorship. The choice is retrofitted after the fact, like a news anchor claiming credit for the headline they just read. If the signal comes first and the story follows, are you truly the author of your life, or just the interpreter? This dilemma haunts us in subtle ways. You scroll through social media, and your mind fills with outrage, desire, envy, signals triggered by a thousand unseen algorithms. You sit in silence, and your brain replays childhood wounds or imagined futures. You tell yourself you are thinking, but are you really thinking, or just receiving the static of the world? Are your dreams your own, or are they echoes of the collective dream? Sometimes, in meditation or deep focus, you can watch the thoughts arrive and pass. They appear out of nowhere, float across awareness, and vanish. You can't control what comes. The mind is a highway, and you are not the traffic. You are the road. Spiritual teachers say, you are not your thoughts. But then, what are you? The receiver, not the message, the antenna, not the broadcast? Or something deeper, the silent awareness that simply witnesses the play of signals? Consider mental illness. For those who suffer obsessive thoughts, anxiety, or intrusive memories, the signals can feel like invasions, unwanted, relentless, alien. To be human is to sometimes receive signals you would never choose. The person tormented by depression doesn't ask for darkness, it descends. The addict doesn't request the craving, it arrives. If you are just the antenna, how much control do you really have? And yet, the antenna is not powerless. You can change your channel, tune your attention, choose which signals to amplify and which to let fade. Mindfulness teaches that while you can't always control what thoughts arrive, you can control how long you hold on to them. Cognitive therapy helps people recognize that not every thought is true or important or deserving of attention. In this way, you become a conscious antenna, able to filter, focus, and sometimes to create. But the mystery never goes away. No matter how far you peer into the brain or how many ancient texts you study, you find the same unanswered question. Where do thoughts come from? Is there an origin, a true source? Or are we all just radios, wandering through the static, hoping to catch a song that feels like home? Maybe, in the end, the origin doesn't matter. Maybe meaning is not in the message, but in the act of receiving, of noticing the signal, of choosing which frequencies to listen to, of making music from the noise. You may never know where your thoughts begin, but you can decide what they become. So the next time a thought arrives, uninvited, ask yourself, am I the author or just the antenna? And perhaps, in that moment of wonder, you'll find a new freedom, the freedom to listen, to tune, and to let the signal pass without needing to know who's broadcasting. Because sometimes the message is not the answer. The message is the mystery itself, the reflection ownership loop. Stand in front of a mirror and stare. At first, it's simple. A face, a body, the familiar shapes and colors you've called me since childhood. But keep looking. Don't blink. Let your gaze settle past the surface and into the layers beneath. The longer you look, the stranger the reflection becomes. You begin to notice tiny asymmetries. A scar on your eyebrow, the crookedness of your smile, the tiredness beneath your eyes. You know this face better than any other. And yet, as you look deeper, it begins to feel foreign. You see your own face and you say, that's me. But is it? What exactly do you own in that reflection? Which part is truly yours? Most people never question it. We trust that the face in the glass is a passport, an anchor, a proof of existence. When we need to ground ourselves, we look in the mirror and say, yes, I'm real, I'm here. But that reflection is a lie in slow motion, a reverse image, always slightly wrong, always outdated. Mirrors don't show you as others see you. The you in the mirror is a flipped version, left and right reversed, a distortion that your brain quickly accepts as truth. In fact, your real face, the one the world knows, is a stranger to you. Photographs sometimes reveal this, making us recoil. I don't look like that, do I? But the world has always seen you the way the camera does, not the way you see yourself in the glass. But it gets even weirder. The reflection is also filtered, not just by physics, but by memory, emotion, expectation. Your brain edits what you see, moment to moment, erasing blemishes you'd rather not notice, amplifying flaws you're obsessed with, sometimes twisting your own image into something monstrous or beautiful, depending on your mood. On days of joy, you see warmth and radiance. On days of despair, you see emptiness and weariness. The face is the same. The meaning shifts. What you think you own is just a temporary construction, a map layered with memories and projections as fragile as fog. Ask yourself, if the reflection is reversed, filtered, and out of date, what part of it is truly yours? What does ownership even mean in this context? Is it the shape of your jaw, the color of your eyes, or is it something deeper, the feeling of I that hovers behind the glass? The truth is, the image in the mirror is never stable. It ages with you, but always lags behind. Your body changes. Your face carries new lines. The person you see today is not the person you saw a decade ago. And yet, the story of me feels unbroken, a thread stretched across years, holding all the old reflections together. Now, step back and consider. Your sense of self is built on this loop, See, recognize, claim, repeat. It starts when you're a baby, catching sight of yourself and pointing, me. Psychologists call this the mirror stage, a turning point where you begin to separate yourself from the world, to say, I am me and not you. But that moment is an illusion, a trick of the brain. What you see is never the real you, only a surface, only an echo. And from that day forward, you are trapped in the reflection ownership loop, haunted by a self you can never fully touch. Why do we need mirrors so much? Why are we obsessed with selfies, with cameras, with windows and reflections? Because the face is a mask and a mystery, a symbol of identity we keep chasing, hoping to anchor ourselves in something solid. But identity is not found in the reflection. It's built in the space between the looking and the feeling. You recognize yourself, and in that act, you construct yourself, again and again. But every time you claim ownership, a question lingers. If my face changes, if my body decays, if my reflection becomes unrecognizable, am I still me? Here's where the paradox bites. The more you chase your reflection, the less you find. Obsess long enough, and the boundaries blur. There are disorders where people look in the mirror and feel nothing. A sense of derealization, as if the face is a mask worn by a stranger. Sometimes, late at night, staring at your own eyes, you feel a shiver. Is this me or just a shape in glass? What am I owning, really? Just skin, bone, light bouncing off a surface? The real I is nowhere to be found. Think about actors who lose themselves in roles, or people who undergo radical transformation, surgery, aging, trauma. The reflection shifts, but the urge to call it me persists. At what point does it stop being yours? If your reflection was altered, if your body changed beyond recognition, would you still lay claim to it? Or would you feel like an imposter in your own skin? This is not just philosophy. Neuroscience shows that our sense of ownership is built from feedback loops: sight, touch, memory, and social cues. The famous rubber hand illusion proves it. Stroke a fake hand in sync with a hidden real hand, and your brain starts believing the rubber hand is yours. Extend this to the face in the mirror. You see it move when you move. You feel the connection, so you call it yours. But it's just a loop, a reinforcement. If the loop breaks, if perception or memory fails, the sense of ownership fades. That's why people with certain brain injuries can lose the feeling that their own limb belongs to them. Identity is not fixed. It's constructed, moment by moment. So, what is truly yours? Is it the face, the reflection, the body? Or is it the awareness behind the looking, the silent observer watching the mirror, never seen, never captured? If you close your eyes and imagine yourself, the image is already outdated, already edited by memory and fantasy. Even your voice sounds different inside your skull than it does to anyone else. Ownership, then, is an act of faith. A story you tell yourself to tie all these shifting pieces together. But maybe that's what being human is. A dance with the unknown. A constant claiming and releasing of self. You see your face. You say, me. But every day the reflection changes, the context shifts, and you build a new version of ownership from the ruins of the old. The loop never ends. You search for proof of your existence in the glass, but the deeper truth is that you are more than any image, more than any label, more than any fleeting arrangement of light and shadow. You are the watcher, not the watched, the presence behind the mirror, invisible but real. So next time you catch your reflection, pause. Let the loop play out. See the face. Feel the old urge to claim it. But remember, what's truly yours is not the image, not the past, not even the story. What's yours is the awareness, the living question, the ongoing act of saying I am, even when you don't know exactly what that means. You are not just the reflection. You are the mystery on the other side, and the loop is only a window into your infinite, unfinished self. The story that writes you. Picture your life as a book you think you're writing. Pages unwritten, pen in hand, every day a new line, every dream a possible chapter. This is the myth we all carry, that we're the author, the master storyteller, the one who decides what happens next. We'd love to say we're writing our own story. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? What if the truth is that the story, with its hidden structure and rules, is writing you, shaping your desires, your memories, your decisions, before you ever put words to the page? Let's begin with the feeling of agency. Each time you make a choice, you experience a rush of self-determination, a burst of freedom. You see yourself at the crossroads. Will I say yes or no, stay or leave, speak up or stay silent? You tell yourself that every decision is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. But underneath that sensation is a gravitational pull, a deep, invisible force guiding what feels possible, logical, or necessary. It's the structure of story. A beginning that defines who you are, a middle that demands growth and challenge, an end that promises resolution. Without even realizing it, you're following the contours of a plot written long before you consciously choose your next move. Think about how you remember your past. You don't remember every moment. You edit, condense, and shape events into scenes and arcs that make sense in hindsight. Pain becomes a lesson. Triumph becomes destiny. The random turns meaningful only when you string it into a narrative. But this need for coherence is a double-edged sword. It doesn't just organize your memories, it begins to dictate your present. You make choices that fit your story, that feel right for your character, that match what has come before. The story's gravity grows stronger. You start to ask, what would I do? What would someone like me do? And the answer is already whispered by the plot you're living inside. Psychology has a term for this, the narrative identity. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, where you've been, what you want, what you fear, what you deserve. But this narrative isn't just an autobiography. It's a script you unconsciously follow. If your story says you're the underdog, you might sabotage your own success so you never outgrow your arc. If your story is about betrayal, you might push people away before they get too close. If you see yourself as destined for greatness, every setback becomes a test, not a defeat. The narrative shapes your choices, and soon your choices reinforce the narrative. The cycle tightens, the plot thickens, and you play your role so perfectly that it starts to feel inevitable. Let's take an example. Imagine someone who grew up in chaos, unstable family, moving from place to place. They craft a survival story. I am a fighter, I trust no one, I make it on my own. As life unfolds, every opportunity to trust is colored by suspicion. Every challenge is a battle to be won alone. The story protects them, but it also imprisons them. Even when safe, even when loved, they cannot escape the role. Every choice to trust feels like a betrayal of the narrative that kept them alive. In the end, the story writes them. The arc determines the options, the character shapes the plot, and freedom feels like a risk rather than a right. Consider romance. You meet someone, and instantly you sense a spark. Not just chemistry, but narrative possibility. Will this be the story where I am rescued, or where I do the rescuing? Will this be tragedy or comedy, epic or fleeting? Sometimes you chase a person not because of who they are, but because they fit the part. The story's template controls what you see, what you miss, what you overlook. Even heartbreak becomes part of the script. When things fall apart, you say, it had to end this way. It's the logic of fiction bleeding into reality, blurring the lines between fate and free will. Let's go even deeper. At the level of society, entire cultures are built from shared stories of success, failure, heroism, sacrifice. You inherit these stories before you ever question them. They tell you what is possible, what is forbidden, what is admirable, what is shameful. If your culture worships individual triumph, you'll struggle to fit your own losses into a story that makes sense. If your society values obedience, you'll feel guilt for every act of rebellion, even when you know it's right. These stories are scaffolding, invisible but strong. They guide billions of choices, none of which feel forced, because the story has become the reality. But can you break the loop? Can you write your own story, truly? The answer is not simple. Awareness is the first step. Seeing how the arc shapes you, how your choices are often echoes of an invisible script. You can begin to ask, whose story am I living? Who gave me this plot? Do I want to play this role, or is it time for a rewrite? Sometimes transformation means stepping outside your own narrative, letting yourself act in ways that feel impossible, illogical, even dangerous to your old identity. You become the plot twist in your own tale, breaking the fourth wall, challenging the author within. Yet, even in rebellion, the story is there, waiting. Because the need for narrative is as deep as the need for air. Meaning is born in story, and story is born in us. Maybe that's the final twist. You are both writer and character, reader and plot. creating and being created in a loop that has no true beginning or end. The story writes you, and you write the story, forever tangled, forever becoming, each shaping the other in every moment you call your life. The wall of total freedom. You imagine a life where nothing is forbidden. No law, no limit, no expectation. A world with no invisible walls, no authority, no parents, no society, no rules of cause and effect to hem you in. You could do anything, truly anything. No one would stop you, no one would care, and every path would open at the slightest wish. At first, it sounds like paradise. The mind races ahead, conjuring visions of impossible adventures, unchecked desire, endless possibility. But soon a strange anxiety creeps in. The weight of absolute freedom presses down like gravity. You stand before an infinite field of doors, every one unlocked, and suddenly you realize you can't move. Why is it that when everything is possible, nothing feels possible at all? The fantasy of total freedom dissolves into a kind of paralysis, not power. The more options you have, the harder it becomes to choose. It's as if the mind collapses under its own limitless sky. This isn't just a philosophical riddle. It's a psychological fact, etched into the smallest moments of your life. Think of the time you stared at an endless restaurant menu, unable to decide. The simple joy of eating becomes a torment of what-ifs. Choose the pasta and regret the curry. Choose the steak and mourn the fish. The more you can do, the less you want to do anything. Freedom, it turns out, is a wall as real as any prison. Consider the lives of people who, from the outside, seem to have achieved perfect liberty. Celebrities, billionaires, those with power or fame. They can buy, travel, indulge, disappear, rewrite the rules at will. But listen closely, and you'll often hear not joy, but emptiness. Boredom creeps in, meaning blurs. The boundaries that once made life feel urgent are gone, and with them, the sense of purpose. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, argued that what humans crave is not freedom from restraint, but meaning. When everything is possible, nothing truly matters. Choices become arbitrary, weightless, hollow. On a smaller scale, you feel this wall of freedom in everyday life. The promise of the weekend, with no obligations, often gives way to a restless aimlessness. The artist facing a blank canvas, the writer staring at a white page, the graduate choosing a career. Each faces the terror of infinite paths. The absence of limits means no structure, no friction, nothing to push against. Choice requires criteria, but where do those come from, if not from some inner or outer boundary? With no shape, there is only a fog of endless maybe. Now, imagine a child given absolute permission to do anything they want, with no bedtime, no chores, no guidance. At first, delight reigns, but soon, chaos. Sleep vanishes, boredom festers, anxiety rises. The structure, the very thing the child once railed against, turns out to be a scaffold, a comfort, a map. Freedom without orientation is indistinguishable from being lost. Even animals, given infinite food or territory, show signs of distress and confusion. Constraint, it seems, is not an enemy of joy, but its foundation. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this the burden of freedom. With no external force to blame, every choice becomes your own. The responsibility is crushing. Did you make the right choice or waste your chance? The mind invents regrets and anxieties to fill the vacuum. Regret is the shadow of total freedom. Every path taken is 1,000 not chosen. The joy of choosing is haunted by the specter of all the lives you'll never live. Paralysis sets in, not from lack of options, but from the impossibility of choosing among too many. But there is a hidden gift in this wall. The very fact that freedom paralyzes is a clue. You were never meant to choose in a vacuum. Human beings are meaning makers, not just choosers. Limits, the rules, values, commitments, even the constraints of circumstance, give your choices shape and depth. The rules of a game make it fun. The edges of a painting make the art. The rituals of daily life give your actions meaning. Freedom, in its purest form, is not the absence of limitation, but the ability to choose which walls matter and why. This is why the most fulfilled people are rarely those with the most choices. They are those who accept, even embrace, some boundaries. The athlete thrives under the rules of the sport. The artist finds beauty in the frame. The monk finds liberation in discipline. Lovers find freedom in commitment. Parents in responsibility. Creators in the resistance of the medium. True freedom is not doing anything. It's caring enough to choose, and choosing enough to care. So the next time you envy the fantasy of perfect liberty, remember the lesson of the wall. Too much freedom becomes emptiness. Every possible life dissolves into none at all. It's the walls you choose, and the meaning you bring to them, that make freedom real. Stand before the wall, and instead of craving escape, ask, what is worth choosing? What do you care about enough to let it limit you, shape you, define you? In the end, the wall of total freedom is not an obstacle, but an invitation. To become not just a chooser, but a creator of meaning, a builder of a life that matters. The reason trap spiral. Since the moment you first asked why, you've been caught in the reason trap spiral. You search for meaning as if it's oxygen, vital, invisible, everywhere you look, but never truly in your grasp. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you ask, even if you don't say it aloud, is, what's the reason to get out of bed today? You crave reasons for everything, for joy, for pain, for working, for loving, even for staying alive. You hunt for meaning as if, without it, your very existence would unravel. But here's the paradox at the heart of the spiral. The need for a reason isn't something you ever chose. It was assigned to you, long before you understood the words to describe it. You live with a burden you never asked for, and you spend your life trying to justify it. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said that existence precedes essence, that you are thrown into the world, raw and unformed, and only afterward do you create your purpose. But he never explained why you need to create one in the first place. Who gave you this assignment? Who whispered in your ear that you must have a reason for everything you do, everything you feel, every breath you take? It wasn't a choice. It was a condition, a rule etched into your bones before you could even think to question it. You are caught in a spiral, searching for reasons, and the search itself is its own reason, a loop that never ends. As a child, you asked why, endlessly, peeling back the layers of the world like an onion. Why is the sky blue? Why do people die? Why do I feel sad for no reason? Your parents or teachers gave answers, but the answers never satisfied for long. Each explanation only created new questions. Each reason only revealed a deeper mystery. As you grew, you learned to hide your questions, to pretend that you understood. You learned that adults, too, are caught in the spiral. They search for reasons in work, in relationships, in religion, in art, in fame, in distraction. But the more they search, the deeper the spiral grows. Think of the moments when you are most lost, when you feel like life is pointless, or when suffering visits without explanation. What do? You scramble to find a reason, any reason at all, to explain the pain. Maybe you blame yourself. I deserve this. Maybe you blame fate. It was meant to be. Maybe you blame randomness or God or childhood or luck. But underneath it all is the same desperate need for suffering to make sense, for joy to have a purpose, for existence to justify itself. You build elaborate stories, invent elaborate plans, create systems of meaning just to escape the terror of reasonlessness. But here's the twist. The need for reason is not itself reasonable. You didn't choose to need meaning. You never sat down and decided, from now on, I will refuse to exist without purpose. The need just appeared, like hunger or fear or the need for air. You inherited it, maybe from evolution, maybe from culture, maybe from the human condition itself. Imagine trying to argue yourself out of needing a reason. You might say, life has no inherent meaning. But the moment you say it, you look for a reason why that should be so. Even nihilism becomes its own desperate search for meaning. The trap snaps shut again. Look at the way you justify your smallest decisions. You choose one meal over another and feel compelled to explain it. You pursue one career, one relationship, one dream, and you look for reasons. Always reasons. Even when you make a random choice, you seek to justify it afterward, as if meaninglessness is too heavy to bear. In modern society, people turn to science, to therapy, to spirituality, hoping that someone will hand them the final answer, the ultimate reason that explains everything. But each answer just feeds the spiral, pushing the questions deeper, making the need for reason more acute. Now ask yourself, who assigned you this burden, whose voice whispers late at night, why are you here? Why do you suffer? Why should you keep going? Was it your parents who wanted you to become someone? Was it teachers, priests, authors, or friends? Or was it something deeper? a silent, collective expectation embedded in every culture and every generation, passed down like a genetic trait or an ancient spell. No one remembers the moment the burden of reason was assigned, yet everyone carries it, often in secret, as if to lack a reason is to fail at being human. Think about the people who are admired most in history. Philosophers, martyrs, inventors, revolutionaries. They are celebrated for their reasons, their vision, their conviction, their sense of purpose. We tell stories about them as if meaning is their superpower, as if they are immune to the spiral. But if you look closer, you see the same struggle. Every visionary, every philosopher, every hero has moments of doubt, when their reasons dissolve and they are left in the void, searching for meaning like the rest of us. The spiral is universal, even among those who seem to have escaped it. There are moments, rare but real, when you slip out of the spiral. Sometimes in nature, watching the sky or the ocean, you are overwhelmed by a sense of awe that needs no explanation. Sometimes in music or art or love, you are so present that you forget to search for reasons at all. For a fleeting second, you exist without justification. But then the spiral returns. The need for reason reasserts itself, and you are pulled back into the endless loop of asking why. This spiral is both a curse and a gift. It is the source of human creativity, of progress, of wonder. The search for reason drives you to create, to love, to learn, to build, to heal. But it is also the source of endless anxiety, of existential dread, of the feeling that life is never enough. You are trapped, but you are also free. The spiral is both prison and engine, both torment and inspiration. So what can you do? Maybe the answer is not to escape the spiral, but to see it clearly. To understand that your need for reason is itself unreasonable, unchosen, and yet deeply human. To notice the burden and to know it for what it is. A condition, not a failure. When you find yourself desperate for answers, remember that you are not alone. Everyone, everywhere, carries the same invisible weight. The spiral binds you, but it also connects you to every seeker who ever asked, why? Maybe in the end, you don't need a reason to exist. Maybe it's enough to witness the spiral, to notice the question itself, and to see that the act of searching is its own kind of meaning. You exist, and you search, and you ask why. The spiral continues, but so do you, and sometimes that is reason enough. The language logic loop. Language is our oldest magic trick, the first tool we wield to tame the chaos of experience. As children, we point, we name, we ask, we listen. And with every word, we pull meaning out of the raw, buzzing world. But what if the very tool we use to make sense of reality is also the wall that keeps us from ever touching what's truly there? What if the language you trust to reveal the world is quietly shaping, even trapping, your reality inside its logic? This is the language logic loop, the paradox that language is both map and prison, both guide and cage. Think about it. Every thought you have is stitched together from words. Try to imagine a thought that isn't built from language, pure sensation, pure knowing. It's almost impossible. Even your feelings, your memories, your silent dreams come clothed in words. You say love, pain, hope, fear. And each time, you package something wild and infinite into a tiny box. You use language to understand, but language is already doing the understanding for you, deciding what fits and what gets left behind. Philosophers have hunted this paradox for centuries. Ludwig Wittgenstein wrote, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." If you have no word for a thing, can you even see it? The Hopi people famously have no separate word for time as we do. Does that mean they experience the world differently, outside our linear trap? Eskimos have dozens of words for snow. Do they see things that we, with only one word, cannot? Science calls this the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Language shapes perception. What you can name, you can know. What you can't name stays hidden. But language is sly. It pretends to be a window, clear and objective, showing you the world as it really is. In reality, language is a mirror, reflecting not the world, but your assumptions, your culture, your history, your fears. Take the word tree. What is a tree, really? To a botanist, it's a classification. Genus, species, structure. To a child, it's a climbing frame. To a poet, it's a symbol of growth and time. To someone in mourning, it might be the spot where they last saw someone they loved. The word tree flattens all those realities into a single label, erasing more than it reveals. Every time you describe reality, you are not just discovering, you are inventing. When you say, "I am sad," the words don't just report your feeling, they carve it, define it, limit it. Before language, your feeling was a storm, chaotic and formless. Now it has a shape, a boundary. In speaking, you make it real, and you make it smaller. The word sadness becomes the cage. You start to feel what you say. Try it. Name your pain, your hope, your longing. As you do, notice how the feeling shrinks to fit the box. This is the secret logic loop of language. You use words to make sense of the world, but words are already defining the world for you. You think language is a tool, but it's more like a filter. Every sentence you speak is a spell, both revealing and distorting what's possible. Let's take a real-world example. Love. In English, we have one word, love. But the Greeks had many: agape for divine love, eros for passion, philia for friendship, storge for family love. When you say, "I love you," the word is heavy, overstuffed, vague. It can mean almost anything or nothing at all, but your language decides which love you feel, how you express it, even what you're allowed to notice. Without the word, can you feel the feeling? Or does the word come first, making the feeling possible? Or think of color. The Himba people of Namibia divide the color spectrum differently than English speakers. They have no word for blue. When shown a field of green squares with one blue square, they cannot pick out the blue, because to them, it is not a different color. Their world is literally colored by their language. Your reality is not raw, but filtered through the logic of what can be named. This loop extends into science, philosophy, even madness. Consider the philosopher who tries to prove reality using logic, building arguments from language. But logic itself is built from language, rules, definitions, if this then that. You use language to prove language, like measuring a ruler with itself. Can you ever step outside the loop? Or are you trapped inside an infinite hall of mirrors, each reflection labeled and relabeled by the words you use? This is the edge where language dissolves. Mystics, poets, and philosophers have all tried to slip past words, to touch what lies beyond. The Zen master offers a koan, a riddle that cannot be solved by logic, only by experience. The mystic sits in silence, trusting that truth lives where language cannot reach. The poet strains to find words for the unspeakable, and, in our finding none, falls back into metaphor, paradox, music. Even the scientist, facing the quantum world, admits, the deeper you look, the stranger things become, and language fails. Have you ever felt something you could not name? An ache, a knowing, a terror, a joy that slips through your fingers the moment you try to speak it? This is the gap at the edge of language, the wild country where words break, where reality bubbles and mutates, refusing to be caught. You glimpse it in the eyes of someone you love, in the feeling of déjà vu, in the terror of loss, in the beauty of a sunset too vast to describe. You reach for words, and words fail. But you cannot escape language. Even in silence, you are still naming, still dividing the world into categories. Safe, unsafe, known, unknown, self, other. Your mind runs on words even as it longs for what's beyond them. The language logic loop is not just a philosophical puzzle, it is the ground of your being. To be human is to live in language, to see through words, to be shaped and limited by what can be said. Is there a way out? Maybe not. But maybe there is a way through. To see language for what it is. Not the world itself, but a map, a tool, a beautiful, flawed attempt to touch the untouchable. To remember that the words you use are not the things themselves, but only signs pointing into the darkness. So the next time you try to name your experience, pause, feel the shape of what cannot be said. Notice the way your words circle the truth, but never capture it. The world is wider, wilder, stranger than language allows, and maybe that's enough. Maybe the beauty is in the longing, in the reaching, in the knowledge that words can never quite hold what's real. Language will always be both the lock and the key. You will always live in the loop. But sometimes, in the spaces between words, in the hush before you speak, you can glimpse the world beyond language, a reality too vast, too deep, too alive to ever be captured by a single name. And in that silent place, you are finally free. The free will lockbox. Imagine you're standing in front of a vault, a lockbox made of invisible walls. Inside is a power everyone talks about, but no one can really define: free will. The idea that you are the author of your own story, the decider, the chooser, the one who could at any moment take a different road and become someone entirely new. We grow up with this idea as gospel. Make your choices, they say. Your life is what you make it. But what if that lockbox is not as open as it seems? What if every choice you make is quietly sculpted by forces you never picked, never even saw coming? What if free will only exists when you use it, but the moment you reach for it, you find that your hand was guided there by invisible strings you never tied yourself? Start with the basics. From childhood, you're told, you can be anything, do anything. Every advertisement, every story, every legend is built on the mythology of free will. But before you could ever make a choice, you were already shaped by your parents, your genes, your language, your fears. You didn't choose your culture, your body, the wiring of your brain, the era you were born in. You didn't choose your cravings or your phobias or the way your mind processes sadness. The things that matter most, the deep patterns that underlie every I want and I will, were handed to you like a script. Before you ever opened the lockbox, someone else set the combination. Now, try to exercise your will. Try to make a choice that is completely free. Say you want to pick up a pen or move your left hand instead of your right. It feels like you are the source of the action. But neuroscience throws a shadow here. Studies show that your brain starts to act before you are consciously aware of choosing. The decision flickers in your neural pathways milliseconds before your conscious mind claims ownership. It's like the lockbox opens on its own, and only then do you step forward and say, "That was my choice." But was it? Or was it just the next domino in a chain that started before you could speak? And yet, the feeling of freedom is real. When you stand at a crossroads, career, love, identity, belief, the weight of choice can be crushing. If it's all pre-scripted, why do we agonize over our options? Why does regret sting? Why does risk feel terrifying? Because there's a part of us, deep and ancient, that refuses to believe we are puppets. We want to be the writer, not just the character. And maybe we are, just not in the way we imagine. Let's break it down with a story. Picture a young artist. She wants to paint, but her family expects her to run the family business. Every day she feels the tension between duty and desire. She finally chooses art. Is that free will? Or is her desire to paint the product of childhood encouragements, genetic gifts, a brain wired for color and form, a culture that celebrates creativity? Even her rebellion is shaped by what she pushes against. Her freedom lives in the lockbox, but the box is shaped by hands she never saw. Now, look at yourself. Every decision you make is filtered through memory, emotion, bias, history. Your taste in music, the words you use in arguments, your favorite food, all are shaped by things you didn't pick. Try to escape. Try to make a choice that is truly alien to your nature. You'll find the walls of the lockbox. Your will can roam, but always within limits you never chose. But here's where the paradox deepens. Free will must be exercised to exist. If you never use it, if you always surrender to inertia or fear, it withers. You become a passenger, drifting in a life that just happens to you. But when you do exercise it, when you make a hard choice, break a pattern, defy an expectation, the very act is still shaped by the conditions of your existence. The lockbox only opens if the code you inherited allows it. Freedom must be claimed, but the territory is always pre-mapped. Some philosophers call this compatibilism, the belief that free will and determinism can coexist. You are free, but only within a framework you never selected. You can move the pieces, but you can't choose the board. Others argue that true freedom is an illusion, a trick of consciousness that lets us feel in control while the currents of fate carry us downstream. Still others insist that the act of questioning is itself an expression of freedom, a proof that the lockbox is not completely sealed. But if free will is shaped by things you didn't choose, is it ever truly free? Is freedom just a feeling, a subjective sense of agency, not a cosmic truth? Or does the struggle itself, the friction between what's given and what's possible, create a real kind of freedom? Maybe freedom isn't absolute. Maybe it's not about total escape from cause and effect, but about playing inside the boundaries, pushing the limits, turning your lockbox into a playground rather than a prison. Consider people who have broken the mold, survivors, rebels, revolutionaries. Their choices seem to defy their upbringing, their culture, their genes. But even these acts are built from what came before. Trauma creates the fuel for rebellion. Oppression breeds the hunger for change. The desire to break free is itself a reaction to being bound. Even your wildest dreams are echoes of old voices, sometimes ancestral, sometimes deeply personal, always rooted in the soil you didn't plant. But this isn't a hopeless trap. There's something beautiful, even heroic, in working with what you've been given, turning limitation into art, turning pain into purpose, turning the lockbox into a crucible for self-invention. Freedom may be bounded, but within those bounds, there are infinite choices, infinite ways to be you. Every decision is a mix of fate and will, chemistry and character, inheritance and invention. The lockbox is not a cage, but a challenge. Every time you try to step beyond your programming, every time you ask, why do I want this? Or could I choose differently? You're pushing at the edges. Sometimes the box gives. Sometimes it doesn't. But the act of pushing is itself an act of freedom. So, is free will ever really free? Maybe not in the purest sense. Maybe we're all playing inside boxes built by time, chance, biology, and history. But within the lockbox, there is still room for agency, for creativity, for surprise. The code might not be one you set, but you can still learn to read it, change the combination a little, pass the secret along to those who come after you. Maybe freedom is the courage to act, even when you know the game is rigged. Maybe it's the refusal to be only what you were given. Maybe it's the wild hope that, within the lockbox, something unpredictable can still be born. Next time you feel the weight of choice, the anxiety of possibility, remember, the lockbox is not the end of your story. It's the start. What you do with what you've been given, that's where your freedom lives, fleeting but real, shining through the cracks, inviting you to reach, to risk, to become. The vault may be sealed by fate, but you are the only one who can decide what you'll do with the key. The pattern perception prison. Imagine staring up at the night sky, lost in the infinite spread of stars. At first, it's chaos, endless scattered lights, each one alone. But your mind can't accept randomness. You start tracing lines, seeing constellations, a hunter, a bear, a story told in dots of fire. Suddenly, what was formless becomes meaningful. This is the pattern perception prison, the paradox where our deepest survival tool becomes our most beautiful invisible cage. From the beginning, your brain has been a pattern hunting machine. It evolved to find regularity in chaos, to spot the movement in tall grass that could mean a predator, to notice the rhythm of seasons, to hear the hidden melody in the noise. Patterns meant survival. To see meaning where there might be none was safer than missing danger. Our ancestors became experts at seeing faces in shadows, omens in clouds, gods in thunder. The price for false positives was low, a jump scare, a superstition. The price for missing a real pattern could be death. But what begins as a gift becomes a trap. The moment your mind finds a pattern, it clings to it. The brain loves certainty. It rewards itself with dopamine, a rush of rightness, every time chaos is tamed. You start seeing 11:11 on clocks, and suddenly it seems to appear everywhere. You remember every coincidence that fits your belief, and forget every one that doesn't. This is called confirmation bias, the mind's way of making patterns real, even when they aren't. The more you see a pattern, the more real it feels. The more real it feels, the more it shapes your actions, your memory, your world. The pattern becomes a lens, and everything outside it fades. Let's get personal. Think about that one song you always hear before something bad happens. Or the feeling that certain numbers, colors, or days are lucky. Maybe you see signs in dreams or warnings in strangers' words. Each pattern becomes a story you tell yourself. A narrative that helps you navigate a life that's always teetering on the edge of unpredictability. But soon, you stop seeing what's truly there. You only see what fits the pattern. The world narrows, colors fade, possibility shrinks. You're no longer reading the chaos. You're reading your own mind, projected outward. Now, scale this up. Societies are built on pattern perception. We see cycles in history, trends in markets, threats in groups of people who look or act a certain way. Stereotypes are patterns, sticky, persistent, and dangerous. They trap whole communities, convincing people that reality is simple, predictable, binary. Science itself is a search for patterns, laws, equations. But science knows its prison. The best scientists doubt their own patterns, looking for the exceptions, the cracks in the model. When we forget to do this, dogma is born, and discovery dies. Pattern perception even invades spirituality and superstition. Tarot cards, horoscopes, rituals. These are all ways of carving meaning out of chaos. They comfort us, offering answers where there may be none, structure where there may be only noise. Sometimes the comfort becomes a prison of fate. You become afraid to act outside the script, terrified to break a pattern that was never real to begin with. This isn't just about superstition. Even your personality is a pattern. You decide, I am shy, I am unlucky, I am an outsider. These identities are stories, patterns in your own behavior. But once you recognize the pattern, you cling to it. You start acting to confirm it. You miss the moments when you were bold, lucky, or welcomed in. The pattern shapes you, and the freedom you once had, the ability to be anything, slowly withers. You live in the walls your own perception built. Is escape possible? Only by seeing the prison for what it is. Real freedom isn't the absence of patterns, but the awareness that they are just stories, useful only until they aren't. You can honor the gift of your pattern-seeking mind without letting it lock every door behind you. Question the patterns. Doubt what feels certain. Let yourself live sometimes in the bright chaos where anything is possible. Because the real magic is this. Every pattern is a doorway and a dead end. You can use patterns to learn, to grow, to connect. But never forget, the moment you stop questioning, the pattern becomes your warden. The chaos you fear holds your only real freedom, shimmering just beyond the bars of your own beautiful invisible prison. The self-concept, freeze. From childhood, you are handed a mirror and told to find yourself inside it. You collect labels, stories, skills, and dreams, piecing them together into something called a self. The process feels urgent, almost sacred. Who am I? What am I like? What do I want? Over time, the answers harden. You become the shy one, the funny one, the driven one, the one who loves music or numbers or the color blue. The world echoes these labels back, rewarding you for consistency, for being someone knowable, for picking a side and sticking with it. This, you're told, is maturity, a firm sense of self, an anchor in the storm. But what happens when the anchor becomes a trap? The more you define yourself, the narrower the path becomes. You begin to curate not just your actions, but your feelings and even your thoughts to fit the narrative you've built. I'm not the kind of person who does that. That's just not me. Growth, which once felt natural, now feels dangerous. Change is betrayal, not evolution. The self you once shaped into armor now becomes a cage, a self-concept freeze that quietly suffocates your potential. Think back to a time you surprised yourself, a moment you acted out of character or took a risk you never imagined. Maybe you, the self-proclaimed introvert, found yourself dancing in a crowd, lost in music. Maybe you, the stoic, felt tears spill over a sunrise. In these moments, the story cracks, and something wild and unknown emerges. But just as quickly, the self-concept snaps back into place. That wasn't really me, you tell yourself. I don't know what came over me. The old identity returns, pushing away the new growth before it can take root. Psychology calls this ego rigidity, the tendency to cling to a stable sense of self even when it no longer fits. The ego resists change because change feels like death. It threatens the story of who you are. Studies show that people who see their personality as fixed are less likely to learn from mistakes, less likely to take healthy risks, and more likely to give up when challenged. When you freeze your self-concept, you freeze your capacity to grow. Yet, stability itself is not the enemy. Like a tree, you need roots to reach upward, a core to branch out from. Too little stability, and you are tossed by every wind. Lost, unfocused, at the mercy of every passing mood. Too much, and you become petrified. Alive, but unable to move. The paradox is that real growth requires both, the safety of a stable base and the courage to venture beyond it. Consider the life of an artist. At first, they mimic others, trying on styles and voices, searching for something that feels authentic. With practice, a signature emerges, a recognizable self. But the most celebrated artists are those who don't stop there. They risk reinvention, shattering their own image, refusing to be trapped by what worked yesterday. Their work is alive because their self-concept is porous, always growing, always in flux. Or look at relationships. The most painful arguments are often not about facts, but about identity. "You've changed," one partner accuses. "You're not the person I married." The longing for stability, knowing who the other is, clashes with the fact that people do change. Real love requires space for both stability and growth, a shared story, but also the freedom to rewrite it. Even at the cellular level, life is change. The body renews itself constantly, replacing old cells with new. The brain rewires in response to every experience, every thought. Yet, you do not wake each morning as a stranger. There is a thread of continuity, a sense of self that weaves through the flux. Stability is not a fixed point, but a dynamic balance, roots that move with the earth. So is stability the enemy of growth or its foundation? The answer is not either or, but both and. Too little stability and you are lost. Too much and you are stuck. The key is to hold your self-concept lightly, to know who you are, but not let that knowledge harden into stone. To allow for contradiction, surprise, evolution, to accept that the story of you is always a rough draft. Next time you catch yourself saying, "That's just who I am," pause. Ask, who decided that? Who benefits from you staying the same? What might be possible if you let yourself be a mystery, even to yourself? Growth is not a betrayal of self, but an expansion. It is the self becoming more, not less. The only real enemy is the belief that you must choose between change and stability, when in truth, you were built for both. Embrace the paradox. Let your roots deepen and your branches reach. When the self-concept threatens to freeze, remember, the story of who you are is yours to rewrite, as many times as it takes. Stability is not the opposite of growth, but its starting point. And growth, in turn, is what keeps the self alive, endlessly unfolding, endlessly new. The desire fulfillment paradox. Have you ever wondered why desire feels so powerful, so urgent, so utterly necessary, right up until the moment you get what you want? It's one of the deepest puzzles of being human. You chase something for days, weeks, maybe years, believing that when you finally hold it in your hands, everything will make sense. The hunger inside you will quiet, and the story will be complete. But as soon as your wish becomes reality, something strange happens. The thing you wanted loses its electricity, its glow, and you find yourself haunted by a new longing. The cycle begins again and you wonder, what am I really chasing? This is the desire fulfillment paradox. Desires only matter while they are unfulfilled. The moment they are satisfied, they dissolve. The thrill is gone, the meaning evaporates, and you're left searching for the next spark, the next ache, the next reason to keep running. Your entire life is a trail of things you once thought would complete you, but which now gather dust in the corners of your mind. Picture yourself as a child, staring at a toy on a store shelf. The longing is overwhelming. A magnetic pull that fills your dreams, hijacks your focus, paints the world in the colors of if only. When the toy is finally yours, the joy is intense, but fleeting. Soon it's just another object, lost among the others, and your heart is already reaching for something else. This story doesn't end in childhood. The toys become grades, then jobs, then money, relationships, accolades, adventures. But the structure never changes. The present desire is always the most important thing in the world, until it isn't. Ask yourself, how many times have you told yourself, "I'll be happy when you get the promotion, find love, buy the house, lose the weight, heal the wound, achieve the goal"? You imagine a future where the ache of wanting will vanish for good. And sometimes you get what you want. For a moment, you feel victorious, radiant, whole. But within hours, days, or weeks, the feeling fades. The desire that consumed you dissolves, replaced by a new craving, or worse, a dull, hollow silence. You realize the chase itself was what gave you meaning, not the thing you were chasing. Science has a name for this treadmill: the hedonic adaptation. Psychologists have shown that people return to a baseline level of happiness, no matter what new thing they acquire. Lottery winners and accident survivors alike adjust to their new reality, finding themselves almost as happy or as unhappy as they were before. The mind is built to desire, to yearn, to imagine a missing piece that will make you whole. Fulfillment is just the bait, the glimmering mirage that keeps you moving. But there's more to this paradox. Sometimes, the act of fulfilling a desire feels like a loss. You get what you want and suddenly feel empty, directionless, even disappointed. The longing itself was vivid, alive, full of hope and possibility. The reality, however wonderful, feels flat, unable to match the intensity of the chase. Have you ever saved up for something for months, only to feel a strange sadness when you finally buy it? Or worked for years toward a goal, only to feel a quiet sense of, now what, when you cross the finish line? The desire mattered more than the fulfillment ever could. Relationships are built on this same paradox. Think of the intoxicating thrill of a new love, the anticipation, the uncertainty, the daydreams and doubts. You tell yourself that once you're together, all will be well. And for a while it is, but soon the fire cools. The dream becomes routine. You start to crave the next adventure, the next mystery, the next desire. This isn't failure. It's the structure of desire itself. An engine that never stops. Even spiritual seekers are not immune. Many traditions teach that the root of suffering is desire. To want is to suffer. To be free of wanting is to be at peace. But the catch is that the desire for enlightenment, for peace itself, becomes another craving. The paradox tightens. You want to stop wanting, but the wanting persists. The chase continues, just with a different name. Social media amplifies this cycle. Every scroll offers a new object of desire: beauty, success, validation, novelty. The moment you consume one, the next appears, brighter, louder, more urgent. You're conditioned to chase, to reach, to compare, and to feel the emptiness that follows. The fulfillment is always just out of reach because that's how the system is built. But what does this mean for your own life? It means that fulfillment is not the end of desire. It is the reset button, the silent erasure that makes way for the next longing. The things you crave most desperately today will soon become the furniture of your past, forgotten, replaced, or perhaps reimagined in some new form. The spiral never stops. You're left asking, am I really chasing the object, or just the sensation of wanting itself? There is a kind of beauty and terror in this realization. If fulfillment cannot satisfy, if the thing you want loses its power the moment you possess it, then desire is both your tormentor and your muse. It keeps you moving, building, loving, learning. But it also keeps you restless, haunted by the sense that nothing is ever enough. So, what are you really chasing? Maybe you're chasing the feeling of being alive, the sense of anticipation, the rush of hope, the fire of longing. Maybe you're chasing yourself, or the possibility of a self that exists just out of reach. Or maybe you're chasing the chance to escape the chase, to find a moment of rest in the endless cycle. But even that is just another desire. What if you paused right now and looked at the shape of your own longing? What is it that you want most, and what do you believe will happen when you finally get it? Will you be changed forever, or will the wheel turn again? What if you could love the wanting itself, savor the ache as proof that you are still reaching, still growing, still alive? What if fulfillment is not the point at all, but simply a doorway, one that opens only to reveal another hallway, another hunger, another chase? In the end, the desire-fulfillment paradox is not a flaw. It is the heartbeat of life. To desire is to be human. To be fulfilled, and then to desire again, is to dance with the mystery of existence. You are not broken for wanting more. You are simply alive, forever chasing, forever letting go, forever becoming something new as each desire burns bright and then dissolves. So the next time you find yourself reaching, aching, yearning for something just beyond your grasp, remember, you are living the paradox. You are writing the story of your life, not in the objects you possess, but in the longing that pulls you forward. And that is a story that never ends. The meaning depreciation curve. There's a peculiar feeling that sneaks in when you try to grasp the meaning of something precious. Maybe it's a favorite song, the glance from someone you love, or a moment that once left you awestruck. At first, the meaning radiates, huge, mysterious, charged with significance. But as soon as you begin to dissect it, to ask why it matters or where its magic comes from, the meaning begins to shrink. This is the meaning depreciation curve, the haunting truth that analysis, for all its promises of clarity, drains wonder from the world. And yet, can you trust a meaning you refuse to question? Imagine a child at the circus, eyes wide as a magician floats above the stage. The spell is perfect. The child believes in miracles, but the adult in the seat behind her is already searching for the wires, the mirrors, the trick. As the illusion is explained, the mystery vanishes. The child's wonder is replaced by the grown-up's satisfaction, or is it disappointment, meaning, exposed to the harsh light of scrutiny, evaporates. Philosophers and scientists have always struggled with this paradox. The physicist Richard Feynman once said he could enjoy the beauty of a flower both as a scientist and as a person. He could marvel at the color and symmetry, but also at the chemistry and cellular structure inside. But even he admitted, the more you analyze, the more the initial wonder mutates, transforms, and often diminishes. You know more, but you feel less. The song you loved becomes a pattern of chords and lyrics. The painting you admired is reduced to brushstrokes, pigment, and canvas. The story you cherished is cut into themes and tropes, stripped of its spell. Why does this happen? The mind wants to understand, to conquer the unknown, to protect itself from illusion. Analysis is a shield against being fooled, against trusting blindly. But analysis is also a blade. It slices, divides, and takes apart, leaving the pieces but losing the living whole. The heartbeat of meaning is delicate. It often dies on the operating table. Think of love. When it's fresh, it feels infinite. You don't question why, just that it is. But then you start to ask, is this love real? Is it just hormones, childhood wounds, unmet needs? The more you analyze, the less you trust. The infinite shrinks to something ordinary, explainable, and dull. The wonder is replaced by suspicion. You can do the same with beauty, with faith, with joy. As you chase the origins, the meaning recedes, leaving knowledge but robbing you of awe. But is the answer to never analyze? To trust every feeling, every flash of meaning, no matter how fleeting? That path leads to naivete, to superstition, to stories that can mislead or destroy. History is littered with wonders that hid cruelty, with beliefs that bred suffering. Without analysis, wonder can be dangerous, a seduction into blindness. This is the dilemma at the heart of consciousness. Meaning is both precious and fragile. You want to keep the magic, but you fear being fooled. You want to know, but you also want to believe. The more you question, the less you feel. But if you refuse to question, how do you know the meaning is real? Let's take another example. Music. The first time you hear a song that moves you, it feels almost holy. You can't explain it. You don't want to. The melody, the rhythm, the voice, all fuse into something larger than the sum of their parts. But maybe you want to learn why it works, so you study music theory, learn about chord progressions and structure. Soon you start hearing the mechanics. The magic shrinks. The spell is broken. You know the secret, but the secret isn't beautiful anymore. This is the meaning depreciation curve. With each step of analysis, wonder drains away. This doesn't mean knowledge is the enemy of meaning. Sometimes knowing more can deepen your appreciation. A botanist can marvel at a flower's anatomy, a physicist at the vastness of the cosmos. But often, the first thrill fades as knowledge grows. The mystery you once revered now feels tamed. The dragon is only a lizard under the microscope. The question becomes, how much do you want to know? How much mystery can you bear to lose? And, crucially, can you ever return to wonder once it's been dissected away? Some people chase knowledge all their lives, building libraries of analysis, only to find themselves nostalgic for the innocence they've lost. Others refuse to look too closely, afraid that the meaning will wither under their gaze. There's a subtle art to holding meaning lightly, neither clutching it with blind faith nor shredding it with relentless doubt. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke urged us to love the questions themselves. Instead of demanding certainty, he said, let the mystery breathe. Wonder lives not in the answer, but in the willingness to dwell inside the question, to accept that some meanings cannot be caught, only witnessed. But what of trust? If you refuse to analyze meaning, are you just surrendering to illusion? Can a meaning that can't survive scrutiny be real at all? Maybe not. Maybe the truth is, all meaning is a little fragile, a little unreal, held together by hope and habit. But does that make it worthless? Or does it make it all the more precious, like dew that vanishes in the morning sun? In the end, the meaning depreciation curve is not a problem to solve, but a rhythm to live inside. Let yourself wonder, let yourself analyze, but know the cost of both. There will always be a tension. The more you know, the less you feel. The less you know, the more you risk being fooled. But meaning is not just what survives analysis. It's what moves you before analysis begins. So the next time you feel awe or joy or love, pause before you take it apart. Let the meaning breathe. Analyze, yes, but gently. The truest wonder lives in the balance between curiosity and surrender, knowledge and mystery, question and faith. That's where meaning survives the curve, fragile, fleeting, and gloriously alive. The belief entrapment reflex. What is a belief, really? At first glance, it feels simple. A belief is a statement you hold to be true. But the moment you look closer, the edges blur and the ground shifts. Belief isn't just a thought. It's a filter, a lens, a pulse of certainty that makes reality feel stable and comprehensible. The stronger the belief, the more solid the world seems, at least to you. Yet, hidden inside every belief is a silent danger. The moment you grip it tightly, the less you're able to see beyond it. This is the belief entrapment reflex. The more you believe, the less you question. And that's the perfect breeding ground for illusion. Picture yourself as a child, seeing the world for the first time. Every sensation is new, every answer a mystery. You ask why the sky is blue, why the rain falls, why people cry. Curiosity is your default state. But as you grow, answers accumulate. Some are given to you by parents, teachers, society, while others you assemble on your own. Slowly, the open landscape of the unknown is paved over by beliefs. This is how things are. This is who I am. This is what's right, what's true, what's possible. The more certain you become, the less you need to ask, the less you need to look. Curiosity gives way to confidence, and for a while, that feels like progress. But confidence has a shadow. When you believe something deeply, you're less likely to poke at it, to ask if it still holds, to wonder if you've been fooled. Why would you question what feels like the bedrock of your identity? This is how illusions gain power, not by hiding from you, but by convincing you there's nothing left to see. The mind closes ranks, forming a shell around your most sacred truths. Anything that challenges them feels like a threat. And so, you defend your beliefs, not just with logic, but with emotion, instinct, and sometimes even aggression. This reflex is not just personal, it's biological. Neuroscience shows that the brain is wired to conserve energy, to automate as much as possible. Once a belief is installed, it's easier for the mind to run with it than to reconsider from scratch. This is why you can drive home without remembering the last 10 turns. Why you can recite a phone number from childhood but struggle to recall what you had for lunch last week. Familiarity feels safe. Certainty feels rewarding. Uncertainty, on the other hand, triggers anxiety, a sense that you're at risk, adrift, exposed. But here's the paradox. The more certain you are, the more vulnerable you become. The less you question, the easier it is for illusions to sneak in and take root. You've seen this in others, people convinced by conspiracy theories, cults, or dogmas, so certain that they cannot see how the ground beneath them has shifted. But it happens to you too, in smaller ways. The story you tell about your childhood, the narrative you weave about your worth, the judgments you hold about people who are different. These are all beliefs that feel like facts, but are often stitched together from memory, emotion, and selective attention. Think about the last time someone challenged a belief you held tightly. Did you lean in and listen? Or did you feel your defenses rise, your pulse quicken, your mind begin to argue back? This is the belief entrapment reflex at work. It's not a sign of weakness, but a universal part of being human. The brain prefers certainty over doubt, even when that certainty is built on shaky ground. The stronger the belief, the more intense the reflex. Over time, this reflex becomes self-reinforcing. You stop seeking out new evidence, you ignore contradictions, you surround yourself with people who agree with you, and reality becomes a hall of mirrors where your beliefs echo endlessly. This is where illusion thrives, not in the outright lie, but in the unexamined certainty. The world is full of examples. Consider the history of science. For centuries, people believed the Earth was the center of the universe. It wasn't ignorance or stupidity, but a powerful belief that shaped how everyone interpreted evidence. Astronomers who challenged the view were dismissed, ridiculed, even punished. Only when enough doubt crept in, when questioning became possible again, did the illusion finally crack? The same dynamic plays out in everyday life. Relationships crumble because one or both partners believe they'll never change or they don't really love me. So they stop looking for new evidence, stop communicating, and the belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nations go to war because their people are convinced of their own righteousness. Prejudice festers when no one dares to challenge the beliefs that support it. Even your own private struggles, anxiety, self-doubt, regret, are often maintained by beliefs you've never fully questioned. I'm not good enough. Things will never get better. People can't be trusted. So, how do you break free from the belief entrapment reflex? Not by abandoning all beliefs. That would be paralyzing, impossible. You need some certainty to navigate the world, to make decisions, to form relationships. The goal is not to live in constant doubt, but to cultivate a spirit of inquiry, to treat beliefs as hypotheses, not commandments, to ask again and again, is this still true? What if I'm wrong? What evidence am I missing? Who might see this differently? This kind of questioning is not weakness, it's strength. It's how you grow, how you learn, how you guard against illusion. It takes courage to question what feels like truth. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. But every time you do, you weaken the reflex a little and expand the boundaries of your awareness. You make space for new information, for other perspectives, for growth. You create room for surprise, for humility, for wonder. You become less vulnerable to illusion and more open to the richness and complexity of reality. But be warned, the reflex never disappears. Belief will always want to harden into certainty. The mind will always long for the comfort of closure. Illusion waits in those blind spots, ready to take root the moment you stop looking. The antidote is vigilance, a willingness to keep asking, keep noticing, keep holding even your most precious beliefs lightly. In the end, the question is not whether you believe, but how you believe. Do your beliefs serve you, or do they rule you? Are you willing to question them even when it hurts? That is the mark of wisdom, not certainty, but curiosity, not a closed fist, but an open hand. And that is where truth, however fleeting, has the best chance to be found. The moral absolute collapse. You grow up surrounded by rules, etched in storybooks, thundered from pulpits, whispered by parents, taught in schools. Never lie. Do no harm. Help those in need. These moral absolutes seem as solid as stone, the foundation of civilization. The line that divides right from wrong. We cling to them, needing the certainty they promise. But as you move through life, the world grows more complicated. You witness situations that warp every black and white rule into a fog of gray. You notice every moral commandment, no matter how sacred, has an exception. And the moment you accept a single exception, the absolute collapses, and you're left stranded, wondering whether morality can even exist without contradiction. Take the simplest rule: never lie. As a child, this sounds simple, virtuous, unbreakable. But what if a lie could save someone's life? What if telling the truth would destroy someone's hope? The moment you imagine a loved one hiding from danger and you lying to protect them, the rule falters. Lying isn't just excusable, it becomes the right thing to do. One exception and the absolute is breached. The same happens with do not harm. Self-defense, war, justice, mercy killings. Every hard line dissolves under the pressure of circumstance. Each unbreakable law bends, sometimes even in the name of a higher good. Look closer at history. Societies have justified torture, violence, even genocide under the banner of moral absolutes. What's forbidden in one age becomes righteous in another. Witch trials, holy wars, political purges. Every horror has worn the mask of morality, twisting absolutes into weapons. And yet, at the same time, rebels have broken rules to save lives, risking damnation to do what felt truly right. The same code that demands obedience can also demand resistance. You start to see every rule's power is only as strong as the exceptions people are willing to tolerate. But if every moral rule has a loophole, what anchors morality at all? Isn't it just endless relativity, a game of justifications and shifting standards? Philosophers have wrestled with this question for centuries. The lawgiver says, here is the rule. The ethicist says, but context matters. Utilitarians chase the greatest good, knowing the path to hell is sometimes paved with good intentions. Deontologists insist on duty, even when it feels monstrous. Moral collapse is the moment when you realize that every system, every code contains its own undoing. There is no rule so pure that it cannot be bent, by circumstance, by compassion, by cunning. This collapse isn't just philosophical, it lives in your heart. You feel it every time your principles clash. You want to be honest, but also kind. You want to be loyal, but also just. You want to protect, but also let go. The agony of real life is that you must choose which rule to break, which value to compromise. Guilt grows in the gaps between rules. Regret grows in the spaces where exceptions live. But maybe morality doesn't die in collapse. Maybe the true test of ethics is not blind obedience to absolutes, but the courage to stand in the storm of contradiction and still choose compassion. Maybe morality is the endless work of holding conflicting values in your hands and choosing, moment by moment, what harm to allow, what hope to save, what rule to bend, what truth to honor. Not because there's an answer, but because there is a human being, flawed, afraid, loving, limited, standing at the crossroads. In this light, contradiction is not a failure, but a feature. Exceptions don't destroy morality. They reveal its heart. They show us that every rule is only as strong as the humanity behind it. The willingness to weigh suffering against principle, love against law. The collapse is not the end, but the beginning of a more honest morality, one that admits its own uncertainty and refuses to hide from the agony of choice. That is where ethics truly lives, not in perfection, but in the endless imperfect work of trying to do what is right, even when the rules themselves can't agree. The inner voice disguise. There's a voice that narrates your life, a constant whisper, a stream of commentary, a running assessment of your every move. Sometimes it's subtle, a background hum of judgment. Sometimes it's loud, barking instructions or criticism as you stumble through the world. You call it your inner voice. You assume it's you, your real self, unfiltered, authentic, honest. But listen more closely, and something strange emerges. The words don't sound as original as you think. The tone is familiar. Its warnings, its doubts, its scoldings, its comforts. They're borrowed, stitched together from other voices, fragments of old conversations, echoes of childhood. Your inner voice is a master of disguise. It wears your face, but speaks with 100 borrowed tongues. Remember the first time you heard, "Don't touch that, you'll break it." Or, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" The lessons didn't stop at the door of childhood. They seeped into the walls of your mind. The voice that tells you to be careful, to stay small, to work harder, to keep quiet. Listen carefully. Its accent is your mother's on a tired afternoon, your father's in the half-light of disappointment, the stern reprimand of a teacher, the sarcasm of a friend, the fear in a stranger's warning. Over time, these voices layered atop one another until their chorus became your inner monologue. This voice isn't just a passive commentator. It shapes how you see the world, what you dare to try, and what you quietly abandon. You hesitate before speaking up, and the voice whispers, "Who are you to say that?" You chase a dream, and the voice sighs, "Don't get your hopes up." You feel pride, and the voice scoffs, "Don't show off, you'll embarrass yourself." You retreat, and it comforts, "It's better to be safe than sorry." These lines are so familiar you never question them. You take them for your own, never noticing how much they echo the fears and doubts of others. But if you pause and listen, you'll notice odd details, an inflection that isn't quite yours, a turn of phrase you never used until you heard it somewhere else. Sometimes, the voice is cruel, channeling past humiliations, playground jeers, the harshness of someone who didn't understand you. Sometimes it's tender, mimicking the rare moments of comfort, the lullabies, the reassurances you clung to. The inner voice is rarely original. It's a mimic, an impressionist, the world's old words remixed inside your skull. Psychologists call this the internalized other, the collection of voices, attitudes, and judgments you unconsciously absorb from the people around you. In childhood, you are porous, a sponge for emotion and belief. The brain builds templates for how to behave, how to survive, how to fit in. Over years, these templates coalesce into what feels like a single self. But in truth, it's a cast of characters, all improvising behind the scenes. But why do these voices cling so tightly? Because the brain values safety above all. If the world scolded you for being loud, your inner voice learns to shush you. If praise came only with achievement, the voice learns to drive you relentlessly, never letting you rest. If mistakes were met with anger, the voice grows vigilant, perfectionistic, unwilling to risk. It may sound like you, but it is ancient self-preservation, a defense mechanism, a shield. What once kept you safe now keeps you small. This isn't just theory, it's the secret script behind so many lives. You find yourself hesitating to reach out for love, to change careers, to speak your mind. Each time, the voice pipes up, rehearsing old lines. You're not good enough. This isn't for people like you. Don't get too comfortable. The tragedy is, you mistake these voices for your own deepest truth, when they're simply echoes, artifacts, recordings from a world that no longer exists. But there is a way to see through the disguise. Next time the inner voice pipes up, pause and listen. Really listen. Ask, whose voice is this? Whose fear am I channeling? Whose disappointment? Sometimes you'll hear your mother's worry, your teacher's demands, a sibling's jealousy, a bully's taunt. Sometimes the voice will flicker between them, changing masks, shifting tone. The moment you recognize the disguise, something breaks open. You see the voice not as your deepest self, but as a collection of old stories, habits, protections. This is where freedom begins. You don't have to silence the inner voice. Trying only makes it louder. Instead, you watch it perform, see it change costumes, let it play its roles. And then, quietly you ask, what do I want to say to myself in my own true voice? Maybe, for the first time, you offer yourself encouragement, patience, forgiveness, excitement. Maybe your real voice is softer, wilder, more creative, less certain. Maybe it whispers not warnings, but possibilities. The disguise doesn't vanish overnight. Sometimes, when you're tired or stressed, the old chorus returns. But now, you see the seams in the mask. You know the inner voice is not your enemy, just a collection of survival tricks borrowed from long ago. You thank it for its service, and then choose deliberately whose voice will shape your life today. Because the true inner voice isn't an echo. It's an invitation to finally speak in a voice that is yours and yours alone. The origin loop trap. From the earliest flicker of human thought, one question has haunted every civilization, every mind, every silent midnight. Where did all this come from? You look at the stars and wonder what made them. You study the patterns of the living and the dead. You reach back with your imagination, one layer at a time, searching for an answer that never seems to come. Every explanation, every origin story, every scientific or spiritual account eventually crumbles into the same impossible riddle. What started everything and what started that? And why is there anything at all? This is the origin loop trap, the ultimate spiral of questioning that no human mind has ever escaped. You ask, what created the universe? Science says the Big Bang. But what sparked the Big Bang? Was it a fluctuation in a quantum field? The mind strains further. What allowed that field to exist? Every answer gives birth to another question, another step backward in a chain that stretches beyond imagination. No matter how far you go, you always hit a wall, an abyss, an uncaused cause, something, somewhere, somewhen, just is, existing for no reason at all. Children sense the strangeness of this loop before adults learn to pretend it doesn't matter. You can hear it in their relentless questioning. Why is the sky blue? Because of light scattering. Why does light scatter? Because of particles in the atmosphere. Why are there particles? Because of atoms. Why are there atoms? Eventually, every parent runs out of answers. The only thing left is because that's just the way it is. The chain of why winds tighter and tighter until it snaps and dangles over the void. That void is the birthplace of all wonder and all existential dread. Philosophers have tried for millennia to break the loop. Some say there must be a first cause, an unmoved mover, a divine creator, a timeless principle that simply exists. Others insist the universe is infinite, with no beginning, no end, no need for a first spark. But both options are unsettling. If there is a first cause, why should it exist? If the universe is infinite, how can anything infinite be real, be actual, be here right now? You stare into the mirror of reality, and it stares back with silence. Science, too, collides with the loop. The laws of physics break down at the edge of time, at the singularity before the universe was born. Time itself, as we know it, is a property of this universe. Before the universe, there is no before. Yet your mind cannot help but ask, what was there really? Where did the rules come from? Who or what wrote the software of existence? Even if the multiverse exists, spawning endless bubbles of reality, what gives rise to the multiverse? Why is there something instead of nothing? Think about how this paradox infects every attempt to explain your own existence. Trace your lineage back through parents, grandparents, ancestors, all the way to the first living cell, to the dust of exploded stars, to the cloud of cosmic gas, to the singularity. Each link in the chain is a miracle, but each is also another trap. What made the singularity? What came before? Every story becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting itself endlessly, never reaching a true beginning. You live in a world built on this riddle, whether you notice it or not. Religion tries to solve the loop by declaring a god, or gods who simply exist, uncaused, necessary, timeless. But the skeptical mind can't help but whisper, who made God? If the answer is nothing, God just is, why can't we say the same about the universe? Science offers quantum fluctuations, mathematical inevitabilities, even the idea that universes are constantly bubbling into existence from the fabric of nothingness. But then the question just shifts. Where does the fabric come from? Where do the rules come from? Why is there something, anything, rather than nothing at all? The truth is, the mind cannot accept just because as an answer. You crave closure, a final chapter, a neat origin story where the beginning is clear and the ending makes sense. But every answer circles back on itself. Every proof relies on unprovable assumptions. The search for origins is not just scientific or philosophical, it's personal. In your own life, you search for the origin of your feelings, your beliefs, your actions. Why am I like this? Why did I make that choice? You trace causes backward, my parents, my childhood, society, my genes, my brain. But no matter how far you go, you eventually reach a place where there are no more answers, only brute facts, unexplained and perhaps inexplicable. This loop can be terrifying. It reveals that some things must exist for no reason at all. Something has to be the foundation. Unasked for, unexplained, unchosen. Maybe it is the laws of logic. Maybe it is a quantum foam. Maybe it is a spark of consciousness. Or maybe it is simply the universe itself, or even the void. But whatever it is a mystery so fundamental that even to try to question it is to miss the point. You are left with awe or terror or a kind of quiet resignation. But maybe there is a strange liberation in the origin loop trap. If something must exist for no reason, then maybe you do not need to justify your own existence with reasons, causes, or purposes. Maybe the ultimate ground of reality is simply that it is. Maybe meaning is something you create, not something you inherit from some ancient source. If the universe itself does not require a reason to exist, perhaps your need for answers is itself part of the beauty, part of the endless dance of consciousness trying to know itself. So the next time you lie awake at night, staring into the darkness and feel the loop tightening in your mind, remember, you are participating in the oldest mystery. You are part of the chain, part of the riddle, part of the miracle of something coming from nothing, even if that miracle can never be explained. And maybe in the end, the most honest answer is also the most profound. Something has to exist for no reason at all, and that something is everything. The infinite self, regression. Who are you really? Not your name, not your job, not your body or your favorite memory. Strip it all away, and what's left? Maybe you reach for something deeper, a true self, an I, untouched by the years. But the more you look, the more you find only a series of echoes, each one shaped by the one before. This is the infinite self-regression, the vertigo that comes when you realize you are not a single, unchanging person, but a cascade of selves stretching backward into fog and mystery, until there's no stable you left to claim. Pause and consider the child you once were, their fears, their favorite foods, the dreams that filled their nights. How much of that is still alive in you? Maybe you've outgrown your childhood, or maybe parts still flicker, haunting your habits and choices. Look further. Who taught that child how to see the world? Parents, teachers, friends, the culture you grew up in? All left fingerprints on your mind, teaching you what to love and what to fear, what to believe and what to doubt. Each lesson, each scar, shaped the person you became. But who shaped the ones who shaped you? Every you is an accumulation, a collage of past selves, stitched together by memory and forgetting. The teenager who first learned heartbreak, the student desperate to fit in, the adult who decided what success means. All those versions live within you, sometimes clashing, sometimes blending, sometimes quietly disappearing. But where is the real you, the fixed point behind all these masks? The philosopher Derek Parfit once argued that identity is not a solid core, but a rope made of overlapping strands, none of which stretches the whole length. Who you are today owes debts to who you were yesterday, but not all those debts are paid in full. Change a few memories, a few choices, and the chain breaks. The you that exists is only the latest draft, written by 1,000 hands you can barely remember. Try this. Recall a time you acted out of character. Maybe you lashed out in anger, or forgave someone you swore never to speak to again. For a moment, you became a stranger to yourself. Or maybe you've looked back at an old diary, shocked by what you believed, who you loved, what you feared. The words are familiar, but the voice is alien. That was you, but not you. Past self, present self. Each shapes the next, but neither can claim to be the original. Psychology calls this the narrative self, the story you tell about who you are, woven from scraps of memory and interpretation. But stories change. Traumas rewrite the plot. Achievements make new chapters. Losses erase pages. And even memory, that trusted storyteller, is unreliable, a patchwork of reconstruction and wishful thinking, colored by every new emotion and experience. The self is not a solid line, but a spiral, forever twisting and reforming. But it goes deeper. Your choices today are shaped by the beliefs you inherited, beliefs born from other people's choices, traumas, desires. Your free will is bent by genetic code, by ancestral habits, by the moods of teachers and the whispers of old lovers. Every time you insist, "This is who I am," you are echoing a chorus of past selves and ancient voices. How many of your desires are truly yours, and how many are seeds planted by someone you barely remember? And behind it all, biology runs its own script. The child's brain is not the adult's brain. Neurons die, synapses shift, memories degrade. The very matter that makes you is replaced cell by cell, over and over. After 7 years, science says, nearly every cell in your body is new. Even your face changes, slowly, relentlessly. What then endures? This is the infinite regression of self. The more you search, the more you find only further layers, each dissolving into another. Like Russian dolls, one self inside another, until the smallest doll is nothing at all. The Buddhists call this anatta, no fixed self. Just a river of causes and effects, actions and reactions, always moving, never arriving. Yet, this isn't just philosophy. It's the root of everyday experience. Why do we struggle with change, or mourn lost youth, or feel nostalgic for versions of ourselves that no longer fit? Why do we sabotage our own happiness, clinging to stories that no longer serve us? Because part of us remembers being someone else, someone younger, someone braver or more afraid. Every day you wake up as a new self, shaped by all the selves who came before. And what about the future? The you who listens to this will not be the you who remembers it tomorrow. Growth, loss, trauma, joy, all will carve new shapes in your mind, pushing old selves into the shadows. The self is never finished, never whole. It is a verb, not a noun, becoming, not being. But if there is no stable you, does that mean you're lost, adrift, a ghost in your own life? Or is it something more freeing? If you are not bound by a fixed self, you are not trapped by your mistakes, not imprisoned by old fears. Each moment is a new page, each breath a chance to rewrite the script. The infinite regression of self is not a void, but a playground. You are not the sum of your past, but the possibility of your future. Of course, this realization can be dizzying, even terrifying. If there's no core, no solid I, what anchors you? What can you trust? Maybe in the end, there is only the pattern, the movement, the process, the story forever unfolding. Maybe selfhood is not a thing to possess, but a dance to perform. Look at your hands. Remember who they belonged to 10 years ago, 20? Recall who you were in the quiet moments. in crisis, in love. All those selves live in your memory, but none of them is here now. You are always in the act of becoming, dissolving, reforming. So the next time you wonder who you truly are, remember, you are the latest link in an unbroken chain, a living echo of all the selves who dreamed, suffered, loved, and changed before you. There may never be a final you to find, only the infinite, beautiful regression of self, reaching backward without end, forward without limit, forever unfinished, forever alive. The consciousness battery problem. Picture waking up from a deep, dreamless sleep. For a moment, there's nothing, just a silent, empty black. Then suddenly, the light of awareness flickers on. Instantly, you're you. A world rushes in. Sensations, memories, the familiar machinery of thoughts. Your body feels heavy or light. Your mind surges with questions, hopes, fears. Something, somehow, has powered up your consciousness. But what is that spark? What charges awareness? And if energy is what creates form, but awareness is what gives form its meaning, then where does the battery for consciousness truly reside? This is the consciousness battery problem. It sounds like science fiction, but it cuts to the very core of what it means to be alive, to be sentient, to be human. At first, the answer seems simple. You're conscious because your brain is awake, neurons firing, synapses sparking, glucose burning in the dark folds of gray matter. You eat, you breathe, you rest, and the engine of your mind keeps turning. Consciousness, in this view, is just the highest expression of energy channeled through the body's living form. But the moment you dig deeper, the puzzle only grows, because every form in the universe, from a stone to a tree to a star, contains energy. But not every form is aware. A rock is matter. A fire is energy. Neither seems to know they exist. Only with a mind does awareness light up. Only with certain arrangements of energy and matter do we see the emergence of self-reflective experience. So, if energy needs form, but form alone isn't enough, what exactly flips the switch and powers up the miracle of being conscious? The paradox deepens. Your consciousness isn't just a background hum. It's the core engine of your reality, the theater where all experience plays out. And yet, the more you pay attention, the more you notice how fragile, how easily depleted this battery really is. Stay up all night and you feel it drain. Starve yourself and the edges blur. Get sick, fall into despair, or run yourself into exhaustion, and awareness dims, narrows, sometimes flickers out completely. It's as if consciousness is a lamp that needs a constant current, but the source of that current is woven from biology, mystery, and something that science still struggles to name. Neuroscience tells us that consciousness is an emergent property, a phenomenon that arises when energy flows through matter in just the right way. But that explanation begs the question, what determines the rightness of the form? If a brain is just a complex tangle of neurons, and if neurons are just cells using the same chemical fuel as a blade of grass, what makes a mind emerge where a lawn does not? Is there a secret ingredient, some hidden order in the energy flow that flips form into awareness? And yet, if you flip the puzzle, you see that awareness isn't just the product of form. It's what allows you to notice form at all. Your conscious mind doesn't just light up because your brain is on. It lights up and immediately begins shaping your world, filtering sensation, creating boundaries, naming objects, building relationships. Without awareness, form is just noise, undifferentiated chaos. It's awareness that carves reality out of the raw soup of existence, giving it structure, story, meaning. So now the loop snaps shut. Energy needs form. Form makes awareness possible. Awareness, in turn, defines and gives shape to form. But if awareness is both the output and the defining element, then what actually charges the battery? When you wake up, what is turned on? When you slip into deep meditation, when you lose yourself in a book, when you daydream, when you fall in love, what is burning inside you to keep the light of I am alive? This isn't just academic philosophy, it's a daily, lived experience. Every morning you wake, and there's a cost to consciousness. You need food, you need rest, you need safety. When you run low on energy, your awareness dims, your emotions darken, your thinking gets cloudy. The battery needs charging. But sometimes, even when your body is well fed and rested, your spirit feels drained. There are days when everything in your life seems full, except your sense of aliveness. It's as if the body's energy is there, but the awareness itself is running on empty. Spiritual traditions call this the hunger of the soul, the sense that there's a deeper battery, one not charged by calories or sleep, but by meaning, purpose, connection. When you fall in love, create art, help someone, discover beauty, your sense of awareness suddenly surges, as if a hidden reserve has been tapped. You feel brighter, clearer, more awake. Conversely, when you're lost, isolated, hopeless, your awareness dims, no matter how much physical energy you have. The battery of consciousness, it seems, feeds on something more than just biology. And yet, all the ancient wisdom and modern science still can't fully solve the mystery. Is consciousness just a trick of energy and form, a temporary pattern that dies when the brain dies? Or is it something deeper, an elemental force that rides the currents of biology but is not entirely defined by them? Some philosophers argue that awareness is fundamental, that it's not produced by form but revealed through it, like radio waves tuned in by the antenna of the brain. Others say that consciousness is a fleeting illusion, a mirage produced by neurons firing in an endless loop. But if consciousness is only energy organized in form, why does it feel like so much more? Why does your awareness feel central, like the realest thing you know, the only thing you can never doubt? Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." But perhaps it's more accurate to say, "I am aware, therefore anything can be." Without awareness, there is no out there at all, no story, no self, no world. So what charges awareness? Is it the energy of the body, the structure of the brain, the meaning you assign to your life? Or is it all of these and something else, a loop that feeds itself, a mystery that no theory can fully explain? The consciousness battery. Problem is a reminder that the brightest lights are powered by the deepest questions. The act of asking, of being present, of staying awake to the world, is itself a form of charging. Every act of attention, every moment of wonder, every spark of curiosity is a tiny surge to your internal battery. When you see beauty, when you risk love, when you make meaning out of chaos, your awareness grows brighter, more vivid, more electric. The battery charges itself in part by reaching out, by noticing, by connecting, by creating. But just as a battery has limits, so does consciousness. It needs rest. It needs renewal. It needs humility in the face of its own mystery. No one lives forever at full voltage, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the greatest energy is found not in clinging to certainty, but in remaining open to the mystery, in letting every day recharge your awareness not just with food and sleep, but with awe, gratitude, and the ever-burning question of what you truly are. In the end, the consciousness battery problem has no final answer, only the ongoing current of attention, the daily discipline of waking up, again and again, to the strangeness of being alive. You are both the battery and the light it powers, both the form and the awareness that defines it. Every moment is a chance to charge up, to notice, to wonder, to live as if your very being is the energy that turns the universe into a story. And maybe, just maybe, that act of noticing is the greatest power you'll ever wield. The observer participation trap. You stand at the edge of the unknown, peering into the heart of reality, desperate for truth. You want to see what's really there, to uncover the world as it is, untouched by your hopes, your fears, your presence. But a strange law awaits you at every threshold. The act of looking changes what you find. This is the observer participation trap, a paradox at the core of science, consciousness, and the mystery of being alive. Begin with the world of quantum physics, where this paradox first revealed its teeth. In the famous double-slit experiment, a single particle, an electron or a photon, seems to behave like a wave, passing through two slits at once and creating a pattern of interference. It's as if the particle exists in a cloud of probabilities, everywhere and nowhere, until you look. But the instant you observe which slit it passes through, the wave collapses. The particle chooses a path. The interference pattern vanishes. The act of measurement, the very act of seeing, forces reality to take a definite shape. But the consequences reach far beyond the lab. If observation changes reality, then every time you look, you rewrite the script. Every measurement, every test, every act of attention bends the world's possibilities. You cannot uncover what was before you looked, because the looking itself transforms it. The reality you find is forever tangled with the act of finding. You stand at the center of the universe's uncertainty, both witness and participant, shaper and shaped. Take this out of the quantum realm and into daily life. The moment you pay attention to something, a thought, a memory, a feeling, it changes. Try to remember a childhood event, and the act of recalling it rewrites the memory, strengthening some details, erasing others. Ask a friend to act naturally while you watch, and their behavior shifts. Even your self-awareness is a trap. As soon as you notice yourself being happy, the moment slips away, transformed by analysis. Like water in your hands, the truth of any experience is altered by the simple act of observing it. In science, the observer effect haunts every experiment. No measurement is perfectly passive. Thermometers change the temperature of what they measure. Cameras alter what is seen. Surveys shift how people answer. Even in the social world, the knowledge that you are being watched can turn honesty into performance, authenticity into disguise. Surveillance and self-consciousness reshape reality, pixel by pixel. And yet, you crave certainty. You want to know the world as it is, to peer through the glass and see something untouched, pure, objective. But the observer participation trap whispers that there is no such view from nowhere. There is no untouched reality waiting behind the curtain. There is only the world as it exists in relation to you, as it emerges through the dance of attention and response. You cannot know what reality was, only what it becomes when you look. This truth can be unsettling, even disorienting. It asks you to accept a universe of relationships, not absolutes, of processes, not static facts. It blurs the line between subject and object, knower and known. You are not a passive spectator in the theater of existence. You are part of the cast, your gaze shaping the scene. Some try to escape the trap by stepping back, looking less, seeking some hidden vantage point. But even the decision to withdraw is itself an intervention. The act of not observing becomes a kind of observation, another move in the endless loop. You are always in the game, never truly outside, but this trap holds a secret gift. If reality cannot be separated from your participation, then you are more than a stranger in a cold, indifferent universe. You are a creator, a collaborator, a note in the cosmic song. The very impossibility of knowing what reality was becomes an invitation to live with curiosity, humility, and awe, to accept that your presence matters, that your consciousness is not an accident, but a force. In the end, the observer participation trap is not a flaw in the system. It is the price and privilege of being alive. You cannot know what reality was before you saw it, but you can know the world as it becomes through you. Every act of attention is a brushstroke on the canvas of existence, each observation a spark that brings the universe into being. And that, perhaps, is the deepest truth of all. You are both the witness and the creator, the question and the answer, the trap and the key.